dun, 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 dun. It's Formula 1 time. The fuck? So that's done. Then we should do like that. Then that's done. Let's see. Okay, so it's the day before Formula 1 season has started, February 28th. So tomorrow, oh well, it's, yeah, Formula 1, but it's Formula 2 and Formula 3 also, that will start tomorrow. And the quali on Friday, and then the race on the Saturday. And then I think after Saudi Arabia it will be back to Friday, Saturday and Sunday. It's because the Ramadan. So let's see. But before we will see some before I will watch some predictions, is some stuff about the carbon fiber vessel liveries, what F1 needs to bring color back. And I mean, just see how the great Ferrari could be if it just was black. I mean, why the red color when you can light and fast? So we'll see what if they have something interesting to say. Let's see, do I even have sounds? No. Okay, sound.
Now that all the F1 teams have launched their 2024 cars, one of the
Yes.
themes of the past fortnight for fans and media has been new liveries, and in some cases, the absence of liveries. A trend at the moment as teams struggle to get down to the weight limit is the use of a lot more exposed carbon fibre rather than those beautiful paint schemes we've had in the past.
True.
I mean, you can understand from a team's point of view why they're doing it, but for many fans it isn't particularly great.
I mean, understand. It's such a cheap way to make your car faster. Just make your car faster in other ways, please.
This fight between aesthetics and performance is a fascinating area for discussion, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Turner, founder of Seamless Digital, who's also the main guy behind Silverstone Paint Technology, the largest paint and coating facility in Formula 1, who works with the majority of the grid on their liveries. So first of all, hi Mark, how are you? How's the kind of pre-season going?
Yes, it's good. It's been a really busy time as always. This time of year, it's all go.
Let's see, should I maybe... Yeah, I don't need this thing. We can go, actually... Let's see, is that... If I click... I mean, just having paint up is boring when you can have Minecraft up. And listen.
Go for the first test and race, in particular this year now, because testing is a week before the first race. So basically everything needs to be ready to go to the test and then straight on to the race. So it doesn't come back here. So it's a busy time, definitely.
Oh, shit.
First of all, for our...
And also, we are back to where we ended last time. Last time was a big problem. Didn't have my pumpkins to place down here. But this, the last of mining, it's 2 rows left to mine out. Then this area is, oh well, more done than it was before. So back to the important talking points.
kind of viewers, Just tell us a little about what you do. People may know you for those digital sponsor graphics we've seen McLaren use that kind of change the logo as they go on. But you're kind of before that. You're kind of F1's paint guru, aren't you?
Guru might be a strong word, but yeah. So founded Silverstone Paint Technology with my brother in 2008. So prior to that, I'd been working in Formula One with Jordan Grand Prix. My first job was working in F1 and ultimately in R&D. And then, yeah, we set up SPT in 2008 and effectively started, painting and supporting F1 teams in their sort of paint work. And then more recently, we've moved into technical coatings. So sort of expanding into other areas of performance within anything that requires a coating or a paint finish. That's kind of really where we're focused on now.
So he will go out of business soon with a little paint they want to get painted.
I think these new ground effect cars, because teams have been struggling to get to the weight limit, they kind of really thrust this kind of the weight of the paint into our front of our face as they're chasing getting every gram off the car. But if we rewind to the previous era, how has painting technology evolved kind of in the year?
Well, people would say devolved. You're going from a paint to being nothing.
Before we saw these carbon use.
10 magiska miljoner och chans att vakna som en vinnare. Postkodlotteriet.se.
Paint mass has always been on the agenda. It's just never been a priority. It's obviously a consideration that it's the furthest extremity of a racing car, the bodywork, and that's not typically where you want to apply any kind of mass. So it's always been a consideration, but there's obviously been some degree of freedom and balance between commercial divisions and the technical side of things. So it's certainly it's always there, but never quite at the level it is now, where we're really chasing every gram. But again, aero sensitivity is always that was typically the key focus. So any kind of sensitive areas, leading wing edges, and other areas sort of around the car. But yeah, I love the sort of the 90s, early 2000 era liveries. Typically sort of that Jordan kind of vibe, where you had all the buzzing hornets and the like. But yeah, it's certainly moved now. It's certainly in the forefront right now. Chasing any opportunity to reduce the overall mass of the livery.
Not wanting to give any technical secrets away, but where do you think we were at in terms of when the paint schemes and all those stickers are at their heaviest compared to how light had we kind of got it down to if a car was fully painted?
Oddly, I think it's probably moved over time because the cars have grown significantly in size. So the surface area is significantly larger than, say, the early 2000s when you sort of had the naturally aspirated engines. They're a smaller car, and then as we moved into the hybrid era, the cars got a lot bigger. So surface area obviously has a direct effect on how much mass the overall paint and livery is going to cost. But yeah, I mean, some of the heaviest sort of round the pit lane kind of talk, because obviously we can't sort of talk about anything specifically that we're involved in. Yeah, there were probably just before the last aero update, so probably 3 years ago. 3 to 4 years ago, we were sitting. Some of the heaviest liveries were over 3 kilos of paint and branding on the cars. That's certainly the indicated kind of torque in the pit lane. And yeah, so that was, I would hazard a guess that would be the peak time, because you've got big cars and you've got some degree of freedom from a mass perspective, so you're not overweight, you're not chasing any, you're not chasing the individual grams, say.
So great liveries. And
that would probably be your peak era, I would guess.
And is there weight variation between colours? I mean, if a team wants to pick a colour, do you kind of roll out some options? And
I mean, I think Nico Rosberg had a black helmet because it was the lightest one, so probably black.
say this, if you go this color, it's lighter, or are they all? Is the technology now? It's all the same, and doesn't matter how it rolls out on the car.
No, I mean typically there is still a discrepancy. It's coverage based, so you're obviously trying to cover a dark carbon surface. So typically, a black grey surface, that the original substrate. So the lighter the color, the more it takes to cover that dark surface underneath. So if you were putting a white or a yellow down, that would typically be a harder challenge. Would take more engineering expertise to maintain a light system mass, whilst covering a dark carbon substrate. So if you were going for the ultimate, you would choose a darker color. Obviously, the danger in choosing a darker color is that then you could equally just argue to go with the carbon, which is like where we're at right now. So it's a fine line, I guess. But I would say, it's the lighter the color, the harder the challenge.
Why don't teams just run a vinyl wrap? Would that not be the kind of the lightest and obvious solution, or is this kind of the paint coating technology you're into, the only answer?
The challenge with, again, sort of conventional vinyl wrap is that you're not able to flush any of that in. So what you really want is something that's ultra thin and there's no transition between painted and unpainted areas. Because obviously if somebody spends a ton of time developing the surface in a wind tunnel, and then a paint shop or a wrapping company comes in and puts whatever they want over it, then that's the last thing you want really is sort of a deviation from what the designer and the engineering team have envisaged. So that's ultimately why. I mean, we're somewhat biased, but why we'd say that the paint route is still a requirement, because you can flush it in. So you always see it when people are running their hands over the car trying to find transitions or steps, and that's really what you're always going to struggle with if you're applying something on a surface. Yeah,
because I've been to an F1 factory, and they've kind of have a nose cone on display with all the different stickers. And I think in the old days you'd run your finger down the nose and you'd feel all the bumps of the stickers. And obviously aerodynamicists don't like that. So these days, you run your nose or fingers across the car and it's perfectly smooth, which I guess people like Adrian Newey absolutely love, don't they?
I assume that's like what you ultimately want is as close to the original designer for the car as possible without deviation. Because ultimately it's a balance, isn't it, between the sort of commercial requirements to fund the team and be competitive, and also minimizing the impact on that from an engineering perspective. So that's sort of the exciting technical challenge that they face between sort of the push and pull between the two sides of the business.
When we first saw these carbon or more carbon cars when the Grand Effect era started, I think it was quite a novelty and everyone quite liked it. So look how beautiful it is with this black carbon. This is how it should be.
Yeah,
but I think as it's gone on, I think fans have grown more weary of it and don't like the lack of colour. What do you think? Your entire career has been spent creating beautiful coloured cars. What do you think about this current push to the black carbon?
I'm somewhat biased. I would say I loved the iconic eras of what I was growing up watching on TV, the sort of 90s with Senna and the likes, but then also later on into the Jordan eras, and now there's still iconic liveries now in F1 where you see a real brand and it's really recognisable. But yeah, I prefer the brighter cars that have their own identity. Definitely, I don't think seeing it all converge to one grid of black, of carbon black cars would be challenging to follow for starters.
Would you like a black Ferrari?
So yeah, definitely not. It's definitely not something I'd love to see. Apart from anything, put me out of a job as well. So,
Yeah, true.
but no, I think that naturally there'll be a solution, and you know, people will continue to push from an engineering standpoint. So, I don't. Yeah, I hope it's not something that continues and gets, you know, more widespread, I guess.
Are there any technology solutions on the horizon that can, you know, bring the
No.
weight of any covering down even more to stop this happening?
There's no
Are there steps you
solution.
can see rolling out in the future, or is this something reliant on regulations and the minimum
Yes.
car weight to address?
I don't know how you'd regulate it easily, because obviously the surface area and the livery, you know, the choice of livery.
Well, if you see carbon, you're fucked. You get disqualified. Man, let's see how many will want to paint their cars done if you can get disqualified just having some carbon.
Design and where you're painting, where you aren't painting. If you regulate a minimum, it might make it challenging to actually standardize that across all the
So just
all
have
the cars.
100%.
I mean, generally
No
also,
carbon.
it's nice to see innovation, because there's a sort of a technical advantage if you can, you know, if you can innovate in the sort of paint and coatings area to produce a you know, a lighter overall finish that the commercial team are happy with. That's kind of what F1's about. You know, in a way, it's innovating and pushing the boundaries forward. So sometimes it's nice when, you know, you're rewarded for innovation rather than it's standardized. So it's push and pull. But again, equally, if we want, you know, we want iconic liveries that fans can identify and you know, pick out in a race, that's also important. So not sure what the answer is, but definitely
No
there's steps
carbon,
forward, and it's
100% color.
certainly internally from our perspective, we've made sort of significant strides in the reduction of our overall you know, paint mass sort of for our system, and that's kind of, you know, that's been driven by people being interested in it. So you're kind of pushing that and giving feedback to the teams, and then they're pushing you back saying, can you take more out of it, can you do more? And that's exciting without actually stripping away how that looks from an aesthetic perspective. That's really what we enjoy doing.
I'm obviously no expert in kind of car coatings and all that sort of area, but is there not a way to colour the carbon? Is there no kind of chemical process or things so you could have a coloured car with actually no paint on it at all?
We have, yeah.
It's not completely in area of expertise, but you're still back to the same issue in that your core substrate is dark grey and black. So for you to dye that in a way that, like, the sort of there are some beautiful products out there where you see these road cars and they've got a light sort of hue to them, where that's typically a dye that's you know, used in the material, but that's not producing a vibrant color. So the further away you get from that, the more it looks like still like a fairly dark car, like a, you know, and it, you know, in certain lighting situations it'll be really striking, but in others it will look like, you know, a carbon car. So
A carbon Ferrari.
it's not, you know, it's not as straightforward as that. In addition, obviously the carbon that's being used in F1 is performance structural, and, you know, it's performing specific structural requirements. So I think it wouldn't be something I imagine the design teams would be really keen on, is, you know, us interfering with pigmenting their pre-preg carbon fiber for an aesthetic thing, and then suddenly it's not getting the same strength characteristics or performance characteristics of the material. So I think that's always a risk when you start to play around with that. So, you know, I wouldn't anticipate that being the solution, you know, colouring the carbon. Although, like I say, it is, in some instances on like road cars and some products, it looks amazing. I don't think it would necessarily solve the issues in Formula One.
No.
And you'd still need the same kind of mass to build up the pigment to produce a vibrant, you know, white, for example. You would have to completely conceal the grey and black that's beneath it.
But I think we've seen definitely the Mercedes. We saw a step more colour returning to that car with a silver nose this season. We've seen cars like Aston Martin and Red Bull, you know, pretty much same as last year and still embracing colour. I guess your message from teams is they're desperate for the colours. They love beautiful liveries. They love the technology you're using, and it's only we're just in this world where the weight limit is pretty extreme at the moment. So by 26, things could change. We could get a fully coloured grid back again then if the weight limit's pitched at the right place, I guess.
Hopefully.
Med stjärnbetyg från kunder och strålande priser från oss. Sök efter vad du än behöver på Amazon.se idag.
Heavy. So much ads. No. Audi.
I think that's the thing. I guess the challenge then is obviously not just increasing the overall car mass because the cars are quite big at the minute. And seemingly, there's a lot of talk about the overall weight of these cars. So if you increase the weight limit of the vehicle to make paint not as much of an issue, then you risk getting it further away from these light, agile cars that the drivers are sort of excited about, excited about driving, and the fans are interested in watching. So it's a challenging one. Like I say, I'm not entirely certain how that's resolved, but I think ultimately as well there'll be innovation, and sometimes it's collaborating with the engineering teams to understand, you know, where there's potential to develop the livery further, and other areas where you might sort of it'd benefit them to not run brand in those kind of areas. So it's a bit of I think there'll be marginal gains to be had from sort of collaborating closer with the technical design team and the commercial design team, and that'll ultimately, you know, get some of the colour back, and also creativity, finding innovative ways to produce a striking livery that also, you know, that also is light, basically. So it's certainly moving that way, and like you say, there are a number of teams that are doing that already. So that's kind of also why it's nice if you're rewarding the teams that are able to run a full livery, then it's kind of an incentive rather than sort of standardizing it. You're rewarding innovation in a way.
So we hope the F1 grid gets more colourful in the future. I'm going to put you on the spot now, Mark. You've talked about the kind of the eras you liked. Is there one specific livery that stands out for you as the most beautiful one of all time?
There are a couple. I mean,
Williams.
Again, it's going to sound just insanely biased, but the 7-Up 191 Jordan and the 197, the snake livery, was just so different, you know, from a period. I remember seeing it when it launched and being like blown away by what they'd done. So if you were putting me on the spot, I would say that certainly from that era. Then again, it's typically reverting back to some of the stuff that I've watched when I was a kid. So Senna was like the driver that that I loved watching and supporting, and so that kind of era of the McLarens as well was really striking. But yeah, I'd definitely say the Jordan 191, if you put me on the spot, with car 191, which was a 7-Up car, and then the 197, which was the snake down the side.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Mark. Really appreciate your time there and helping us scratch under the surface of how teams approach livery. I didn't write that. That was a script writer, so the gag can go for him. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, that was deliveries that will maybe, let's see if I click that yeah. I mean, yeah, hopefully, man. I mean, oh shit. fuck skeleton? See, need to go back. And that scared me. Okay, back to. Let's see. No. Oh, well, we can actually do this. We need to change the clip either way, but man, the future. I mean, this would be so funny if this actually becomes iconic liveries. But oh, do you remember when Alpine was 50% carbon? Do you remember when Mercedes was 50% carbon? Oh, McLaren. Or, I mean, Stake F1, man, the carbon car. Okay, but we need to go. We will change to. Is it time for? We can continue with them. Oh, Formula 1 ad.
Side by side they go. Oh, it's going to be contact. It's total chaos.
The
Russell
total chaos.
being passed by the gaggle of cars.
Three-way fights became five-way fights, corner after corner.
Lando Norris has taken pole.
Wait,
It's time
what?
for a new season of Formula 1.
Who said that?
Bara en till.
Get them in more ads.
Oj. Gud vad gott.
Pågen gifflar.
I
Bara
just
en
skip
till.
it. God damn it. Let's see. Oh, F1 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix. So what can we expect from Autosport? What can we expect? Oh, I should also do. Because now we're done with the livery, so we can go and change to the other stuff. Then I need to see. Let's see if I go to. Yes, they're back. It's still there. It's changed, I mean. Let's see. Bahrain. Red Bull and Ferrari being at top. It will be a 2022 fight again. Not. I mean, it could be a Ferrari win, but probably not. It will be maybe a P2. What more? McLaren will be up there and fighting for maybe at least P3 if they're lucky. So it could be a Red Bull win, Ferrari P2, and McLaren P3. What more could happen? Let's see, Aston Martin. Will they do anything interesting? Oh, Alonso will be fast. He will finish above Mercedes. So it will be a really good start of the season again. seeing Mercedes being bad again. What more fun can happen? Could Williams maybe get a point? No, I don't think so. No points for Haas, no points for Alfa Romeo. Steak, Sauber, kick, I mean. Maybe points for Visa Cash App. But it's more likely that Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, Aston Martin is the only teams that are getting points the first race. So yeah, that's my prediction.
The F1 season in 2024 is just days away from kicking off.
True, or maybe when this clip came up, but it's tomorrow.
Or Bahrain Grand Prix. And this year marks the 20th anniversary of that race, kicking off the longest season in Formula One history. I am Steph Wentworth, and joining me today we have Jake Boxall-Legg and Hayden Cobb. Welcome to the both of you. Before we get onto the data, let's preview some of the technical aspects of the cars this weekend. And actually, we'll break this into three main segments, starting off with the 2024 tech, moving on to performance data, and then looking ahead to the race itself. Okay, seeing as we have our technical specialist, JBL, here, let's start with the tech stuff. RB20. Lots of people are arguing that there are many similarities to the W14, but the Red Bull family have evolved and developed that concept to kind of make it work. What can we say about those specific upgrades on the RB20 in comparison to the Mercedes?
Well, testing was our first chance to really see what was going on with the side pod inlets, what was going on with quite a lot of the car actually, because they kept it very conspicuously hidden over its launch. So it was good to kind of see it finally out in the open.
Alpine did the most hidden. They were nowhere.
It was very apparent the side pod treatment they've gone for is very, very different to what everybody else has. We suspected they had like a vertical kind of inlet, which they do have on the RB20. But there's also a kind of smaller horizontal inlet kind of recessed into the side pod undercut, really. So it's really interesting design characteristic, trying to reduce the size of those inlets as much as possible. But what they have is they have another set, I guess, either side of the driver's head. So one of the areas that you speak of being similar to the Mercedes W14 is those very, very high shoulders around the engine cover. And so what we've got there is a kind of channel in the middle, and they've been able to kind of put an inlet into that where the halo mounts the chassis. But there's also sort of loads of cooling gubbins and sort of fins and inlets and outlets and that sort of thing. So it's really interesting to see the way that they've kind of gone for trying to work out what the right mass flow rate of air cooling that they need is, and kind of almost spreading it around the car so that they can have the sort of best aerodynamic effect around the side pod and sort of everywhere, really, without sort of doing the traditional thing.
Is the first gold here?
Obviously, when the W14 came out last year, they'll have looked at some of the characteristics of it and tried it out in the wind tunnel. That's just something that all the teams do. Not necessarily wind tunnel, but CFD as well. Everybody kind of tries each other's things to kind of work out what they're doing. Cool. So I think that's kind of probably where the genesis of that probably come from, and then they'd seen something that they liked in it, and that's why they've chosen to pursue this route.
Well, we'll wait and see what Red Bull have up their sleeve this weekend. On to Ferrari.
And that we'll see tomorrow.
They've been one of the only teams to keep that rear pull,
or more or less on the evening,
rod suspension layout. Why do you think this is from their perspective?
Well, this is something that their technical director Enrico Cardillo actually spoke about, because obviously teams switching to a push rod rear has been quite a sort of talking point.
I really hope this will not ruin the Ferrari, that they keep doing what Red Bull don't do.
Season. So why hasn't Ferrari done it? Why has it kind of gone away from what this year's convention is? And Ferrari reckons that they couldn't really find enough benefit in it for what the weight, with regards to weight saving, with regards to compliance in the rear suspension. They didn't find enough advantage in the
last row of mining,
move away from it. Basically, what they have with regards to their suspension is something that works really, really nicely on the curbs. That's been a trait of Ferrari for the last few years, actually.
So maybe Monaco and Baku win is more likely?
You just kind of see it, like, especially with the old, I think it was back in 2019 in Singapore, you could just see how nicely it rode those curbs.
Oh, maybe Singapore also.
It's kind of kept that characteristic. And that's really, really, really confidence inspiring for the drivers in sort of slower speed corners. I guess kind of the entrance into the slow speed corners last year wasn't a particularly good strength, but once you're in it and once you're exiting, Ferrari was pretty decent there. And they've tried to enhance that effect more. The drivers are a lot more happy with the handling, so it seems that their decision to stick with the pull rod has been justified. It does have a sort of slight centre of gravity bonus with compared to a push rod suspension. You have all of the springs a lot lower down, but the downside and why everybody is moving to the push rod is largely for an aerodynamic effect, where you're just not using as much of the floor space as you can to house springs and things like that. So it's a trade-off, but Ferrari didn't think it was worth it.
And kind of sticking on Ferrari and their characteristics, they've kind of gone for a fat nose, and we're seeing these appearing more. The Alpine has one, Red Bull has. What is this concept that kind of seems to be spreading and reigniting? And what does it mean? What's it doing?
So obviously with regards to the front end of the car, that's kind of where you set everything up for what you want to do. The wing is hugely important. What you do with the nose is hugely important as well. I don't think necessarily all the teams have sort of gone with the wide nose direction. Mercedes and RB, they've gone for sort of quite narrower noses. But again, it's all about what you want to do with the airflow around the front of the car, and it's also about where you stop that nose as well. Red Bull, for example, they're extruding the nose all the way to the leading edge of the front wing. Some teams are stopping it an element short. Again, it's what you want to do. But basically, what you can do with a sort of wider nose, if you like, is you can control the airflow, for a wider sort of area, I guess. But what you're also trying to do is you're kind of wrapping the airflow around to the nose, because what you're going to get is you're going to get some degree of separation underneath, and you just kind of want to trim that off so that you don't have this pocket of drag around the front end, because if you sort of have that sort of draggy wake, if you like, and it's going towards the floor, you're just going to have this sort of pocket of very sort of not particularly energized airflow going underneath, and that's going to be really detrimental to your floor performance. So it's all about how you mitigate that, how you energize that air in that area.
Talk about
by stopping
like
with
the
Ferrari
nose.
have done, by kind of taking it to the top three elements and kind of stopping it before the bottom one. What you've got is you've got a free slot gap, and you can use that to trim off airflow on the underside. It kind of depends what teams have found in the wind tunnel and what they deem is the best option. But it's certainly a trend that we've seen. Whether Mercedes and whether RB will go in that direction later in the season remains to be seen. But certainly seems to be a trend. I think that's what the 2022 show car came with. Nobody really went for it in the start, and now everybody's sort of going back to that old idea.
Experterna är lyriska över nya kasino som får toppbetyg bland Sveriges största jämförelsesajter. Vi har enkel registrering och
we can skip it. Nice.
I know, we're finally getting to see it out in action. All right, finally, to conclude our tech segment, should we say, have you noticed any other trends that we're likely to see throughout the season among any of the other teams?
More colours on livery.
Just back on front wings, they've become hugely interesting this season. There's a few sort of tweaks. Obviously, the Mercedes one is the big ticket item there for sure. You've got that really narrow top element between the sort of like the part where the wing flap adjusts and the nose, and that's literally there to satisfy the rule that says you must have 4 wing elements there. They're not using that for performance. It's literally there to tick a box.
Yeah, cheating.
What you've actually got is you've got this wing element on the other side of the flap adjuster that's not actually connected to it. You've got a very tiny gap between it and the next part of that wing. And what this is doing is you're going to be able to create a vortex here, and that's something really important. That's something that aerodynamicists have been doing for a number of years. I think ever since the kind of regulations changed in around 2009, 2010, they wanted to use the wingtips for a vortex because they can wrap that around the rear tyres of the car. You're keeping the tyre wick away from the floor, and therefore the floor is getting lots of lovely clean airflow. And Mercedes found a way to do that. That's something the FIA wanted to get away from. That's why the wing element's attached to the nose now, because what it does is it creates a load of what we call dirty air. That's detrimental to the overtaking product
car for
on
2
track.
years.
So that's just something that the FIA wanted to do, and Mercedes has found a way to get around that. I was lucky enough to go up and down the pit lane during testing, and the Haas front wing was surprisingly interesting. The RB front wing was quite interesting. Seeing the way that all of these teams are putting tiny little winglets onto the rear end of the end plate to try and strengthen the flow in that area, that's quite an interesting trend. So yeah, it's been really cool to see. I think almost a bunch of old ideas come back. We've had 2 years with this rule set now, and teams are finding ways to kind of bring in, I guess, components that were outlawed in between 21 and 22 and bring them back for performance gains. I think it's quite interesting.
Excellent. Well, thanks, JBL, for breaking all of that down for us. We're going to move on to a bit of data and performance now. In terms of both one-lap pace and the long runs, it looks like Mercedes and Ferrari are quite close to Red Bull, but you could argue that Red Bull is just not showing the extent of their car just yet. What can we
Mercedes being close, that's copium.
Understand from the data so far, and how does it compare to what we've seen so far?
I think it's safe to say that Red Bull is still head and shoulders in front of everyone. Of course, and this counts for all teams, we never truly know engine modes or fuel loads when they go on these long runs, in particular looking at the race simulations. But for the sake of looking at what happened last year and going on trends, they're largely in rank of where you would expect them to all be. So they're probably not all showing their full hand in terms of engine modes, of course. There's no obligation to.
Man, that I have heard that they didn't even try to be fast, and they just made fast laps, or Max could do that. Just new tires and then already fast. No need to work hard for that.
But it's safe to say that
great season
particularly in the hands
ahead.
of Verstappen, when he was on his race sims, and quite quickly into them over that 3 days of pre-season testing, looked very comfortable, and the pace was there above the rest of the team. Perez, particularly when he was doing his race sim during testing, it was more comparable to the Ferrari, and that sort of gave this sense of maybe Ferrari have made a game, particularly with their focus on race runs, with looking after the tyres and making sure they can last us a full stint. Now, is that a sort of a closer gap because of driver versus driver or car versus car?
Yes, driver versus
Again,
driver.
difficult to know because they were running at totally different times. But I think you could hesitate to say, just going on again.
Carlos Sainz was fast.
Probably have that step over Perez, at least to start with.
Come on now.
Therefore, the Red Bull package probably is as strong as we've seen it in his hands compared to, say, the closer gaps when it was a sort of Perez and Sainz doing their race runs at a similar sort of time. But it does seem to be pretty close, and I think the trend will continue. It could easily be track dependent as well, as JBL.
I would say close enough so Ferrari can win at least 3 races, at least 2, maybe 3.
The tech front there,
With
circuits
Leclerc.
that suit the
No
sort
win
of
for
philosophy in
Sainz.
the package that each team has delivered, Ferrari, like I think Ferrari and Mercedes in this scenario, could see them sort of pull that difference slightly smaller or get ahead of each other in that sense. But you'd still safely assume that Red Bull look to have a decent sort of chunk of time on the others, but we'll sort of see how it goes when everything sort of shakes out come Saturday's Grand Prix.
And what about the midfield, Hayden? Because obviously it will
Alpine
probably fluctuate throughout the season. It's very tightly packed with, you know, the McLaren, the Aston, the RB.
That the mid? What the fuck is Alpine then?
They kind of seem to be the next group of cars behind the
no,
front runners, should
them.
we say. What can we say about their quali pace and their race pace so far from our understanding?
It's fair to say probably
McLaren are also in the mid team. Mercedes, what? Mercedes is the mid team.
All those that are listed
they are shit.
Potentially the harder ones to put a
Hate
sure sign
speech
on,
against
mostly
McLaren
because of
and
their disruptive running. Now, it certainly wasn't as bad as they've had in recent years with their brake issues or general car problems that they've faced. There was just niggly things here with a clutch or an engine sort of throttle mapping, and therefore they didn't get their race sims in at the same time as everyone else. And I think people can definitely correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think Norris really got a clean race sim throughout the entire testing program. Obviously, he got long runs in, but nothing that was useful in terms of comparison. Piastri, on the other hand, and did. So again, you sort of have a question mark over them. You wouldn't expect them to be too far away from where they ended last season.
No, but somehow
but there's this
behind
unknown
Mercedes.
of maybe they could be in that Ferrari Mercedes bracket, or maybe they would just be a little bit behind.
Someone didn't watch the last season.
Aston again, I think they looked to have made progress, but I think it's at the same rate of everyone else. They've obviously gone for the evolution front rather than any sort of huge change concept. So it'll be again interesting to see where they are. And as everyone sort of said, there's big one eye on this new RB, what was AlphaTauri before, having taken a lot of design inspiration, to put it politically correct, from Red Bull. Does that give them an immediate boost? Will be clear.
Yeah.
I think they've certainly made one hell of a jump over the winter through the developments and the changes they've made to that car. And with a driver lineup of Ricciardo, Tsunoda, you'd think they'd be able to hit the ground running, because they're two incredibly experienced drivers. You won't have a Tsunoda trying to fight the fight for the team with De Vries struggling at the start of last year. So you would certainly expect them to be there or thereabouts in terms of the midfield fight, and certainly starting far stronger than they did last year. The rest of them could be a bit of hit or miss season so far.
Yes, and looking slightly further back, it does seem as though kind of we've lost Alpine and Sauber from that further forward group, should we say, and they're kind of alongside a struggling Haas and Williams.
The Alpine is
this
gone.
a surprise for both of those teams? It's a surprise to see, and can we see them maybe moving forward throughout the rest of the season?
Certainly. I think starting with Alpine, and I will definitely throw to JBL on this one from a technical point, is it's clear, and they've made it very open, that they've hugely changed their car in almost every area, looking for this,
like they did last season.
Breakthrough. A little bit like other teams have, but it hasn't, at least so far, with 3 days of running, has not worked. And looking at the sort of the race runs, times they really are on the back foot, and I think that is because of all these changes. They're still learning about this, effectively this new car. Gasly put on a brave face at the end of the third day of running, but they openly admitted they weren't where they want to be. And if they're saying that publicly, then privately it probably means a great deal more in terms of where they are in the pecking order. But JBO, is that fair to say in terms of where Alpine have gone with this new direction?
Maybe they should sell to Andretti. Maybe that is Alpine's future.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Matt Harmon said at the launch, pretty much everything on the car is new, only the steering wheel really carries over, which I found surprising because it looks very kind of similar in ethos compared to last year's car. I think these are largely internal changes, try and get a little bit, just improve the packaging, get a little bit more out of the powertrain, because given the, Alpine is very keen to point out that it's about 30 brake horsepower down on everyone else's powertrains. But what we can glean by the fact that that there's so much exposed carbon on the livery is that it's slightly overweight, and this is something that Bruno Famin, the team principal, was a little bit coy about. He didn't particularly want to talk about that too much. He said that the team was on target with where it was, but it does seem that it's a bit overweight, and it does seem that the drivers aren't particularly happy with it at this moment in time. I did get to watch a little bit of the Alpine's trackside, and it just didn't have that sharpness, that bite going into turn 11 particularly, because that's a corner where you've got to, and we saw this in testing, a lot of drivers going kind of wide, loading up and then snapping the steering wheel over to the left-hand side and going up the hill. And it just seemed to be a little bit lazy in that respect. Obviously the Red Bull was highly agile there. Ferrari, McLaren looked quite good there. Alpine just didn't have that X factor, let's say.
Yeah, and I guess you could say the same about those other teams that are in this bracket. Sauber, Williams, Haas as well. And trying to figure out exactly how they shake up is obviously very tricky now because it is very close. But yeah, taking Williams for example, they openly acknowledged they had last year. They will
be the best team of them.
That works on certain circuits that suits the characteristic, and they basically tried to design and change the car to be a more consistent all-round package. Now it seems that they may still have those strengths when they go to those sorts of areas, but trying to make those changes over one winter and indeed over just 3 days of testing means that you may, at least on paper, look a little bit further behind because you're learning it. Haas openly admitted as well that they're focusing on their biggest Achilles heel, a little bit like Ferrari, which was the race pace in terms of how it absolutely destroys the tyres over a stint. And so therefore it almost made no sense for them to look specifically at performance and one lap running.
You can say they're still trying to find out why they're still in Formula 1.
Because they know that previously they've had that pace and that performance that they can, you've seen Haas quite regularly make the top 10 in qualifying, but then just go backwards. So there was almost no point, let's say, during testing to focus on that. Sure, it's a nice shiny headline time, but it means 0 in terms of the World Championship. You get no points for testing. So I guess all you could also say there is if they have been able to make breakthroughs or at least a big learning, they will hope to then deliver it this coming week and for the first few rounds.
They will not.
So, yeah, as is always the way, it's the cliche. Take the testing times with a big pinch of salt because all teams have different programs and different.
Why not with sugar? Salt is disgusting. It's salty.
Hos oss på Citygross kan du välja dina vardagsfavoriter från ett stort och brett sortiment. Bland kända varumärken till våra egna märkesvaror. Välj den prisnivå som passar dig bäst. Med våra märkningar lågt pris varje dag och kolla priset. Hur du handlar smartare ser du enkelt i din butik och på citygross.se. Vi ses!
No, fuck yourself.
Targets.
Exactly, and we'll finally see performance for reals in just a couple of days. But moving on to the actual Grand Prix itself, because that's the juicy part of all
Max
this.
win.
We said earlier, F1 is no stranger to racing in Bahrain. It is the 20th edition here in the desert. With pre-season testing also held here quite a few times in recent years, the teams have a lot of information on this track and that will help their run plans and creating their strategy. How helpful is this in comparison to other tracks, for example? JBL?
I think it's certainly very helpful. It's almost like Barcelona syndrome. The teams have been there so much now that they've basically got a sort of almost a foolproof race plan. But
yeah, look at Mercedes 2023. It worked out so good that even Stroll and Gasly in an Alpine just passed Hamilton like it was nothing. So yeah, great stuff for Mercedes.
The thing is, every year, particularly with the Bahrain circuit, is ever since it was first raced in 2004, the asphalt has been exactly the same, and so it's got rougher and rougher throughout the seasons. And so we're at a point now where if you look at the strategies from last season, like no team went without going for a 2-stop, and some even for a 3-stop. Such as the tyre degradation, they can overheat so easily here as well. So I think we're going to get some variance, certainly. Everybody looked really at home on the circuit over testing, so I don't know if there's going to be the situation where someone crashes out and we have a safety car or something like that. Everybody seemed to be really, really clean. But I think we'll get a lot of strategic variance for sure. I think that, you know, a team can still pull a rabbit out of a hat, so to speak. We're expecting the results to kind of go a certain way, and you know, I guarantee that for some of it will be wrong, but that's the fun of pre-season predictions, isn't it?
And on the topic of strategy, Pirelli have selected the C1, C2 and C3 compound tyres for this weekend, which is the exact same compounds that they selected last year. But Lando Norris in the race in 2023 was actually the only driver to use the C2 compound tyre. Hayden, can we expect the same this year? I mean, last year was a two-stop strategy. Again, do we think we'll see the same thing?
I certainly would expect the majority of teams to target a two-stopper. And it will be that sort of same dilemma again, which will depend on a few of the factors that we've already mentioned of temperature. Obviously, the grip levels will be incredibly high at the circuit off the back of testing and then the Grand Prix weekend itself, which will aid tyre life. But equally, it could also depend on qualifying positions. If somebody qualifies out of position, that sort of naturally dictates their strategy options. But I would certainly assume a two-stopper with the majority probably starting on the softest compound, obviously going on the back of qualifying, and then it's up to their strategic geniuses to figure out how best it can work in their favour. And as sort of JBL said, that the likelihood of a safety car, although not uncommon, I know that statistic always comes up, but it seems high, and there's almost like a safety car almost every other race. But for Bahrain, you would think that it's not so common outside of the first couple of laps. So again, but if that does happen and that does occur, then
I mean, will Russell and Hamilton start near-ish? Then it will be a bit.
Obviously, that'll kick in.
Yes, sacred code in the first lap.
Turn strategy on its head. So yeah, two-stopper starting on the softs, going for probably hards, and then depending on how the race pans out, sticking with those or going to the mediums.
Absolutely, and reliability is also a key factor, as you mentioned, in terms of safety car and strategy. But over the 3 days of testing, the teams actually covered 19,996 kilometres of distance with fairly few issues overall. What did all of these long runs tell us about tyre deg, and how might that translate into strategy this weekend, Hayden?
I think on the whole, it's as expected. The tyre compounds themselves haven't changed a great deal from last year, and obviously the teams have a huge amount of data to go on, and on the whole, I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but the C3 and C2 compounds are certainly the most frequently used, obviously with one eye on the Grand Prix weekend itself as well. But I would expect to see it in terms of a two-stopper. A one-stop could probably, if with the aid maybe a safety car be a thing, but largely, as you say, the abrasive nature of the Bahrain track means that the tyres themselves won't, in a race performance mode with those heavy fuel tanks to start the race with, they just won't last as long as it could to make it an easy one stopper. But yeah, the teams have certainly got a lot of data to work on now, and it could certainly, with those that are already on top of their tyre management, it could open up more strategies for them.
Well, all right then, to round everything off, JVL, we'll start with you. Based off of everything we know so far, what do you expect going into this weekend?
Red Bull number 1, Ferrari 2, and it would be amazing to see McLaren up there also. And then can maybe Mercedes come with Aston Martin.
What do I expect? I think I'm going to play it safe and say I think we can expect a Max Verstappen victory. I think we can expect Ferrari giving it as much as they can to try and stop that from being the case. And I think that, we've gone into this and we've made a lot of predictions about what we expect to happen for the season, where we expect teams to be. I think we could probably expect to be wrong at some point. I think it's just good to get back going again. Hopefully, I'm going to predict an interesting race.
I think we're all manifesting that. Hayden, what do you expect? Similar or anything different?
Similar, and going on, I guess you could just go form guide at Bahrain, you would fully expect in this era, Red Bull versus Ferrari at the front, and probably Verstappen to be at the head of that particular pack. Curious to see what McLaren could do, as I've sort of said before, in terms of their slightly difficult to read pre-season testing running, but also if you go on last year, they still had those brake issues, and it was a nightmare for them. I think if they finished way down the bottom. I think there may have even been mechanical retirements thrown in there. So in terms of their very recent history at the Bahrain track, it is a bit of a unknown altogether. So if I was optimistic, maybe seeing a Piastri or Norris throwing in a bit of a surprise there, that would be good to have. And then who knows, that maybe that RB really has the pace to take for it and can get some big points early in the season. A bit like we've seen fairly recently with the likes of Haas. They've always been able to spring a surprise in the early rounds. So who knows? I wouldn't be that surprised if Ricciardo Tsunoda can get some decent points early on.
Yeah, who knows indeed. Well, that just about does it. And now all that's left to do is for us to sit back and watch it unfold. Just a reminder, this race this weekend is on one day earlier. It will be taking place on the Saturday, so make sure you don't miss out. And subscribe to the channel to catch all of our continued coverage of the 2024 season. And while you're at...
The practice will start tomorrow. The race will be in...
Let us know what your predictions are for the
3
weekend.
days.
Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.
That's clip done. Så some copium for Mercedes and less faith on McLaren. That's questionable. I mean, I just look at their last season. How good Mercedes was not. Let's see. I think it's time for bringing. Let's see. That up, because we will have. Let's see, I need to do that. Then we have some prediction of the championship. From P1, prediction the entire 2024 F1 Championship 20 to 1st. So my prediction for now, Max Verstappen will be the world champion. Who knew? Charles Leclerc will be close, and this will be amazing. Lando Norris also P3. So Max will maybe win more than Charles Leclerc and then Norris, but it will still be a fight between them. Maybe not in points, but in races. Then we have Sergio Perez. I mean, he's still in a Red Bull, so he should be at least behind the top people. Then Fernando will have a really fun in his car. Carlos Sainz will have less fun in his car. And then Mercedes will be behind the McLarens and Ferraris and Red Bulls. But they will still, they will be better than one of the Aston Martin cars. And I don't think Oscar Piastri will maybe be better than Lewis Hamilton. But I really hope, because this will be so funny. And then the question is, where should will okay, it says AlphaTauri, but will Visa Cash App RB be even better than Alpine? And will Williams succeed to be better than Stake, Sauber, Kick, F1 team? But it will 100% be better than Haas. But we will see. What are their oh shit, sound. We need sound.
Prediction. Our 20th to 1st Drivers' Championship predictions.
And also, yeah, Red Bull. They will be construction champion. Then Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, Aston Martin, AlphaTauri, Alpine, Williams, Alfa Romeo, Visa Cash App RB, Stake, Sauber, Kick, F1 team, and then Haas.
Today, we
But
have ditched our silly little setups for something incredible, Tommy.
No.
We are here at the Silverstone Museum with a backdrop of dreams.
It is incredible, yeah. Normally I've got half-scale helmets in the background. Now I've got real, life-size Formula 1 cars. What a flex.
When the cars looked good and have paint on them.
They're not yours, though, Tommy.
I wish they were, yeah.
You're flexing, but they're not yours. Our good pal David Coulthard's cars.
I know.
There as well. But yes, so big thanks to the
Williams
Silverstone Museum for allowing us to be here. We've also got a discount code as well. If you want to come along to the Silverstone Museum, P1MT, and you can get 10% off, which is lovely. Only for you beautiful
do
people.
it because it's such a good place
to get involved.
If you're a big racing nerd like us, it is heaven.
It certainly is. Right, let's get into our 20th to 1st Drivers' Championship predictions. My 20th placed driver for 2024 is Kevin Magnussen.
What? Really?
Okay, so Logie Bear's probably pretty buzzing.
Let's see, I could maybe actually have the same opinion. I mean, Kevin Magnussen, please go away and let Mick Schumacher come back.
Right now,
Logie Bear's cooking right now.
I'm hyping him up to above 20th. Kevin Magnussen, he was lackluster last year.
True.
Haas look absolutely abysmal. But I feel like Magnussen will just be outperformed again by Hülkenberg in a car that you absolutely have to deliver if it for some reason works and doesn't degrade the tyres after 3 laps. I just think K-Mag won't really deliver, and he'll get a big fat 0 points as well to boot.
So this may shock you, but in 20th I have gone for Kevin Magnussen. That being said, and I apologise because this kind of spoils the next one.
Spoilers.
But I have already mentioned this on our predictions podcast, that I predicted that Haas would be the biggest meme and thought they might not even score a point. And
that would be
while
fun.
I think Magnussen won't
That's
do better.
also something I really hope for. Because, man, removing Mick Schumacher, they're no justice. So Haas should just be... Det var gott, what can you call it? Oh my god. Yeah, man. They did something bad and now they pay the price.
Better than Hülkenberg. We've seen this before. The one that comes to mind is Robert Kubica versus George Russell. Like, I think this, between the two Haas drivers, it could come down to a rogue 11th or 12th place that decides who finishes above in the championship. So I have gone for Kevin Magnussen.
Interesting stuff. We now move to 19th.
No surprise. I've gone for Nico Hülkenberg.
Have you?
No way.
Really?
So yeah, I don't think Haas are going to have a very good time this year. They're going to struggle for points, if any. Yeah, I mean, when your team principal is already predicting that you're going to be 10th in the title, it doesn't give you much hope, does it?
Oh no, I mean, he did say at the start of the season. Let's not forget Haas are well known for upgrading their car a lot during a season.
Yeah, can't wait for their RB20 to arrive in 3 races time.
Okay, interesting. So Haas slander very much kicking off in this podcast. In 19th, I am not Haas slandering. I'm slandering Logan Sargent. Logan Sargent will finish 19th in the Drivers' Championship with a solitary 1 point, where 8 cars get disqualified in front of him, and he will finish P10. But no, I haven't. I know it's testing. I know that can't take too much from it, but what you can take from it is confidence in the car. He didn't show that confidence really throughout testing. He was making quite a few errors. Maybe he's just trying to...
He didn't? But the people I've listened to, he did, so what?
Find the limitations of the car. But for me, I am not convinced, and I think Logan Sargent will have another mediocre season, and it won't really reward him many
Someone
points.
did watch the...
So now we go to 18th position.
Testing.
Med stjärnbetyg från kunder och strålande priser från oss. Sök efter vad du än behöver på Amazon.se idag.
You can skip that in 1.
And it is Nico Hülkenberg. So I'm not expecting anything crazy from Haas this year, but I am expecting a Nico Hülkenberg masterclass.
We are done. At least we are on the floor ground. Then it's just the walls around that need to get mined out. Maybe just these 2, not these.
From now on, just the odd occasion of a Nico Hülkenberg masterclass. Canada, where he just popped at P2 with a bit of rain. Just changeable conditions. Nico Hülkenberg is very, very good. And also there are sprints. Let's not forget that as well. That's where he got a decent chunk of points last year, was in the sprints rather than the main races, because Haas can't do a longer period than a third into a race distance without, and also needed a pit stop in Austria for that to actually work for them. But you know, stranger things have happened, and I still believe that Hülkenberg is a very good driver. I just don't think that Haas will be able to give him anything more than 18th.
P18, I have gone for Zhou Guanyu.
Okay.
Yeah,
You really are on the Logie hype train.
Yeah, and not on the Sauber, Stake, Kick, whatever you want to call them, hype train. It's not really on him. It's a car thing. Although that being said, end of last year I was a little bit disappointed with his performances. You were hoping for maybe that like one breakthrough result or something. I know he ran second in Zandvoort at one point due to strategy. Maybe here's the go.
It was amazing.
P3 in testing, but I just don't buy that Stake are going to be this good team. I've just called them Stake when I said I was going to call them Sauber. That team is going to be very annoying this year.
Stake, Sauber, Kick, F1. Come on.
What you meant. I have gone for P17. Zhou Guanyu. I am also on the same thoughts of Stake F1 Team Kick.
On 17, I have him 2019, 18. Okay. Whoops.
Sauber, and the fact that I mean, they didn't look very good in testing, to be honest with you, apart from that P3 on day 3, and everyone's like, oh my god, they're here. I don't think they are. Similarly to you, Zhou wasn't particularly great last year. He should be, in his stage of his career, smashing Bottas, who is chilling with a mullet and having a great time. And I don't think that will happen again this year.
He will not only smashing Bottas, we might be smashing...
Yes, I've gone for P17 for Zhou Guanyu.
P17, I have gone for my GOAT, Logan Sargent, P17.
So he's a P17 merchant this year.
Yeah, up 4 places. Yeah, I think he's going to have a better season. Maybe score the odd point, but I don't expect this drastic improvement that maybe James Vowles expect.
Now, do you think that scoring the odd point here and there is due to the car being better, or Logie being better, or a mixture?
I feel like Williams will probably be about the same as they were last year.
Expecting the come up for Logie.
And yeah, he might do a bit of a better job. He had a really poor rookie season, but fingers crossed he can have a better season this year. So I've gone for 17th.
P16. I'm locking in the other Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber person, Valtteri Bottas. I think it'll be close between the two teammates. I don't see anything to get excited about, unfortunately, for this team. Bottas, as I mentioned when I was talking about Zhou, I just feel as though he's just chilling. That man's just having a great time. He looks great. He's getting his arse out on a calendar. Like, this bloke is just living the dream. And I genuinely think he is enjoying himself as well, where he's just driving a Formula 1 car, which he loves doing, but he's not being, trying to get every microfibre of his being to put into the sport and to try.
So maybe time to remove him.
P16, I have also gone for Valtteri Bottas. While Bottas, I do agree with you to the point where, he is chilling a bit more, enjoying sort of being in Formula 1 and just having a bit more fun. You can tell that kind of weight of Mercedes has come off his shoulders, and
then
he
Alex
can express himself a bit more and just have a bit more of a personality and enjoy himself without that pressure of being in a championship fight and helping his teammate and things like that. So that being said, I think he does have maybe like a Kimi Räikkönen, that 1 or 2 performances in a year, unlike Zhou Guanyu, where he just pops it like P7 in a qualifying session. You're like, where's that come from? And then he delivers a good race, and I could see that happening again. That's why I put him ahead of Logie Bear. Okay, P15, I have gone for Alexander Albon.
Oh.
Which I guess is quite low down.
Slanderous.
Yeah, but it's weird. Imagine 2 years ago saying that, because I predicted him so much lower down the order. I do think Williams, I do think he's going to have a good season again, and Williams will improve, but I look at the teams above Williams, and I think it will be hard to beat them, which is why he's down in 15th. I still think he will show great performances. I think he'll absolutely smash Logan Sargent again and deliver solid and good points finishes and keep his name in that frame of those top teams that still haven't been decided, because he is a name that's been thrown around a lot for Mercedes, even a return to Red Bull.
Interesting. Okay, so this is where I've been chefing slightly, but not in a good way. For P15, I've gone for Esteban Ocon. I am sensing a terrible season for Alpine. I don't know why. I do know why. They tried to get rid of all of the paint almost immediately, so I feel like maybe in the simulations
And now they're putting it back on, so that's...
And now they're putting it back on, which I don't know. That's just mixed messages for me. They didn't look particularly impressive in testing, again. Testing. But I don't know. I watched Drive to Survive as well. They just seem like they're a team that's not particularly, as you say, together. They're just ready to fire blame at anyone that they possibly can, because they should be this team that's at the front 4. All right, calm down. I don't know if that's really the case. Maybe rebrand to Renault, you can talk. But I don't know.
Yeah, true.
I just sensed that they're
and paint it yellow. Go back to where you were.
Backwards rather than going forwards now. And I feel like this kind of as always with Drivers' Championship results at the end of the season, is very close. It's between a point or 2. So you kind of have to just go, yeah, right, that person could go 15. But yeah, I just feel as though Alpine have got a big storm coming. 14th position, Lance Stroll. Yep. Yeah.
Lance Stroll? Oh, Yuki Tsunoda.
Again, I don't believe on his side of the garage it's going to be great. I've also obviously kind of...
Man, I must be a bigger believer.
On with Fernando Alonso. In the previous predictions, I've said Fernando Alonso's going to have a terrible flop. A terrible flop. But I have to kind of continue on.
And I don't want Stroll even in the Formula 1. Holy shit.
Thought, otherwise I'm just a hypocrite here, you know what I'm saying? So I feel as though Aston Martin may not have as good of a year as we would hope. And Stroll was absolutely destroyed by Alonso last year, and I think that will happen again this year. So yeah, I think Stroll will finish quite lowly down.
P14, I've gone for Esteban Ocon.
Oh my God, excuse me, you just caught my breath there.
You're so shocked.
We're both chefing. Wow.
So Ocon, yeah, I find it very difficult to choose between the two Alpine drivers. I think they are very evenly matched. They were both very close in the championship. I have gone for Ocon just in P14. I don't think Albine, the new team name. They're going to rebrand again. Alpine are going to have a great season either.
Albon would drive in Alpine.
Going backwards rather than forward, and a bit of a mess.
So I thought I was cooking, and it turns out we were both in the same kitchen.
Maybe.
Absolutely love that.
It would be
what is your next
bad
P13?
P13, no surprises. Pierre Gasly. I think it'll be extremely close between the two teammates again.
Gasly?
Might even be the odd incident between them. I'm not just saying that because I've watched the episode of Drive to Survive.
Wait. See, 13. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 15, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14. Oh, Yuki Tsunoda have 13. 12 Pegasus recovered.
5 where they were even. That was a very interesting insight into Alpine, and while they can say, "Oh, we're best friends," it did show that there's still a lot of tension there, and I don't think that's good for a team. Yeah, I think Alpine are going to have a rough year.
Okay, my next driver is Pierre Gasly. So I feel as though Gasly's got a worldie in him. Ocon does as well, as we saw. Both drivers last year did get a podium. I feel as though Gasly...
Yeah, because what reason? Leclerc didn't get to... Oh, fuck me, scary time. Didn't get to start. Start where he should have started. Gasly got in because Perez failed his driving test. What can you say? Yeah, whatever it's called. It's driving when it's close to when it's a lot of water on the ground.
Yeah, we underestimated him last year. We did. We both said he was going to be biggest flop. We ate our words for that, I think. And for me, he's only going to get better as he settles into that team. It was a brand new team for him last year. This year, he's had a year there. He's understood the workings and getting used to Esteban Ocon being on the other side of the garage, stuff like that. And I feel as though he will improve on his performance, but he will be counteracted by the fact the car's worse. So that's why I've gone for P13 for Pierre Gasly. Next up, because you might have noticed I've not selected a particular driver. Alex Albon is going to be absolutely flying this year, and he's going to finish P12. I am, as mentioned already, on the James Vowles hype train, literally sat next to the train driver. I can see the journey ahead, and it's stardom. I just love his way of working, his management, and all of that sort of stuff, and I believe that he is genuinely going to make Williams a great team. Bringing people together and to have that harmonious racing team
this year
is so important for success, and I genuinely believe that effect will start to now sink into Williams. I think, before that he's not going to be able to change much because the car's kind of set and that sort of stuff, but as we go through the years now and this plan that he has, I feel like he's going to bring the best out of people, and Albon's going to have a great year.
Lovely stuff. P12 I have gone for Daniel Ricciardo. Yeah, the V-Carb hype train.
So, Daniel Ricciardo, let's see, where do I have him? Let's see, we do it. I mean, Yuki Tsunoda. I have there. Wait, did I say that? Wait, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16. 15, 14, 13. Nej, Pierre Gasly 12. Daniel Ricciardo 11.
I think they're going to have a much stronger season. Of course, they were languishing at the bottom. And if they do deliver this, and they are battling your likes, ahead of your teams like Alpine and Williams and things like we've mentioned, even if it got to the point where in some races they were fighting those topper teams, it's gonna be a lot of controversy, I think, if V-Carb start delivering, and I think they will. P11 I have gone for Yuki Tsunoda. I think.
Wait. No, this is.
Formula One is back.
Formula One ads. Wow. Hi.
I think he will beat Daniel Ricciardo, but only just. I don't think he'll beat him. I've predicted him biggest good surprise. I think he'll deliver some good races. He's improving.
Yeah,
year on year, I hope with a better car, what we saw at the start of last year, when I don't think the AlphaTauri was that great, he could deliver P11 every race, and that was when the car wasn't great. So if he can compete and have a car that is quicker than, you know, the likes of Alpine and Williams and stuff, I would hope, and what I've gone for is that he will score a lot more regular points.
In P11, I've gone for Yuki Tsunoda. I am on the V-Carb hype train as well. I feel as though,
me too, but
again, they will
some realistic
forward, and Tsunoda will get beaten by Daniel Ricciardo.
So before we get into our top 10 predictions, we thought we'd show you around a little bit of the Silverstone Museum. Just a casual Williams FW14B. Now, we're not going to show you every...
Nice, I don't care.
Get down here, all right? See you there.
No.
P10, Daniel Ricciardo. I feel as though, I'm not going to disrespect DR. I feel as though he ain't done yet, which I've definitely got from DTS. It's going to be close between the two of them, definitely. I just feel as though Danny Rick absolutely, categorically has to beat Tsunoda this year.
Yeah.
And I feel like he will, but it'll be close, and it'll be a hard-fought thing throughout the entire year.
P10, I have gone for Lance Stroll. He's made it into the top 10.
Wait. Before I'm laughing, where do I have? Okay, let's roll. I have P10, so that was not that.
I think he'll have a catastrophic year like he did last year. I don't think he's going to be amazing and suddenly channel these performances, because I don't rate him in that high regard, and I don't think he has that in him, despite, you know, the odd podium and stuff.
But they're mostly because I believe in the car.
Yeah. No, I think it'll have a decent year, if not spectacular, and will just do enough to keep his drive, because it's under threat, clearly. Sarcasm. P9, I have gone for George Russell.
P9.
I'm glad people haven't arrived at Silverstone Museum.
P9, George Russell. I have Lewis Hamilton.
Because I feel like I'd be getting eggs thrown at me for saying that George Russell
probably
is going to finish P9 in the championship. But of course, I am doubling down on Mercedes, going to be a bit washed. George didn't have the greatest season last year. I find it really difficult to predict the top teams, because there are a lot of great drivers, and of course last year it was very similar, that you had Lando, Alonso, Sainz, Leclerc, Hamilton. They were all really close on points, weren't they? And
it could have
gone any way. Like Alonso somehow got fourth in the end, but it could have easily been seventh. It was crazy, and I really do feel like it'd be like that again. It's not as harsh as it sounds, but I have predicted in P9, which is a bit harsh. But I don't think he's going to be like miles off the next.
P9 for me, I have gone for Fernando Alonso. You're not going to like that, but
why?
Look, he's still going to outperform the car. He's still going to have miraculous moments, I'm sure. But I do think that Alonso might struggle a little bit more than what we saw last year. Aston Martin came out the blocks firing, and they had a car that was unbelievable. But what they clearly struggled with was developing that car and being able to stay with the other teams that were upgrading and developing and getting faster. So yeah, I think Alonso P9. But yeah, I still think he'll get the odd podium or two. P8, George Russell. Mercedes, I think, are the hardest team to read in the world when it comes to practice sessions.
They believe in McLaren, really.
Just purely because they never seem to show their hand that often.
And you don't really know how good they are as well, because they push a narrative of, oh, we're awful and we're not where we want to be, and then they finish second in the constructors' title.
Exactly. So they do utilise every single last point. But yeah, I just feel as though Mercedes might well be beaten again by McLaren. I think they'll be beaten by Ferrari this year.
Yeah, true.
That puts them down. That puts them down around the 7th, 8th mark. So yeah, Russell for me. P8.
P8. I have gone for Oscar Piastri. I think he'll improve his race performances, which is what let him down last year. But if you'd have asked me to predict the championship order before we saw testing, I think I'd have maybe put McLaren quite a bit higher and been on that hype train. But I know it's only testing, but maybe I could be completely wrong. Oscar Piastri is going to have a good year, but I'm just not on the hype train of McLaren like I was before. I don't think they're going to be like awful. I certainly hope they're not going to be as bad as they were at the start of Bahrain. I don't feel like they're going to be a team that's going to be challenging like Red Bull or something at the start of the season, and that might suffer for them a bit. P7, I have gone for Fernando Alonso.
Dun, dun, dun.
I personally think Alonso will have quite a good start to the year. We know that he's going to get the maximum out of the car and will have that insane consistency and grab points, which is why, while I don't think Aston are going to be amazing throughout the whole year, I think Fernando Alonso's consistency will take him to that next level, which is why obviously he's ahead of a Piastri and a Russell, which maybe have a car just as good, if not a bit better, but Alonso has that like metronomic consistency.
P7. A certain fan base aren't going to like this one. I've gone for Lewis Hamilton. I think Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton they're actually going to have quite a mediocre year. I've lost faith in them a little bit in the sense of building them a great car. It's not the fact that he will drive badly.
It just took 2 years for you to understand that.
I just feel like he'll be limited by his machinery. Hamilton was great last year, did a lot of incredibly consistent, great performances, a lot of podiums. I can just see it being this kind of thank God it's over kind of interview in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be, so Lewis, you know, another sort of disappointing year for Mercedes. You know, looking forward to next year with Ferrari, and he'll be like, yeah, can't wait to get in there.
Reigning champions Ferrari.
Yeah?
Oh, spoiler.
Stop it. Come on. But yeah, so sorry to all Lewis Hamilton fans out there. Sixth place.
Don't be sorry. Fuck that.
Piastri will have a better year, I think, similarly to you, Tommy. I just feel as though his car potentially be a little bit better than maybe you're believing. He has to improve his race pace this year, and I'm sure with a year under his belt and the data and figuring out maybe Lando Norris's driving style slightly, if that's going to help him, all of those combinations and factors will allow him to be slightly better in the race. Not in qualifying. I think he was brilliant in qualifying. So closing that gap is something he has to do, and I think he will do. But yeah, he won't beat Lando Norris in the championship.
Speaking of Lando Norris, P6, I have gone for Lando Norris.
Holy cow!
I know. It's just something about the vibes at McLaren. I'm just not feeling it after testing.
What?
And
why?
You're wearing orange.
I know.
Not papaya.
I'm P3.
You're wearing orange.
Just not. I'm just.
So that's P6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have colored signs at P6.
Not feeling McLaren for some reason. End of last year, I'd have said, yeah, Lando Norris probably maybe like P3 in the title or something like that, or right up there. But now, yeah, for whatever reason, could be totally wrong, but vibes aren't there. P5, I have gone for Carlos Sainz.
Ooh.
Think Ferrari going to be good. Carlos will have another year very similar to how he has this year, where I think he's a bit more consistent, will be a solid driver and score a lot of points, and I'm hoping will impress one of the top teams, because yeah, he deserves to be in a good car.
P5 for me as well, Carlos Sainz. I think it's going to be really close between him and Leclerc, spoiler.
No.
Sainz has shown every reason for everyone to believe that he is minimally worse than Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, it's
probably not the best way of trying to give him a compliment, but I feel as though he is comparable to Charles Leclerc. Last year, he was incredibly impressive. You know, that
goes under the radar, I think, how close they actually are.
Yeah, Carlos, you know, at the big moments, he's...
When they have a bad car, when they have a good car, Charles Leclerc will just...
The one that delivered last year.
Make him
it hurts to say it out loud, but you know, he got pole at Monza, he won Singapore.
Yeah, I wonder why the car is bad for Leclerc.
You know, there were these big key highlight moments that I don't feel like he gets enough respect for. P4,
he's really
my boy,
don't
Charles Leclerc.
Make
he's going to be fourth for Charles this year. Again, it's going to be. I think it's going to be very close between sort of fifth to maybe even second, in my opinion. But yeah,
Who is the true Ferrari fan here? The fuck is this?
Still don't fully trust that Ferrari are going.
Yeah, sure. The Ferrari fan is speaking now.
I think it's because I'm hurt. I'm emotionally drained, bruised from Ferrari. I just don't trust them in the race, whether that's due to reliability pit stops, which weren't too bad last year.
Ja, men de didn't trust Mercedes, so
just tire degradation
what does
and
that say about them?
the car, which they keep saying, it's improved for this year. Genuinely, I would happily eat my words if Charles Leclerc becomes world champion. Please, I will lose all the points. But yeah, P4 for me.
P4, I have gone for Lewis Hamilton. He's quite high up for when I said Mercedes would be washed and the biggest flop. I think Hamilton will deliver in the Mercedes like Alonso. He is that driver that delivers amazing consistency. He just extracts the most, and it's a shame because we want to see him win again, but he is that kind of driver that will be like second in races and third at the moment when like the car's not there, and like deliver the maximum of the car. And that is why I think that he'll score a lot of points, even though I'm not trusting massively in Mercedes. P3, I have gone...
Oh, let's see. P4... P4 Sergio Perez and Lando Norris P3.
Kan någon bara sätta in en logga för ett elbolag som jobbar för framtidens el? Tack.
4. Hamilton's future teammate, Charles Leclerc. I think Ferrari are going to be the second best team. I think this year they will actually deliver on that promise.
Right.
I don't think they're going
to... Did they really believe in Sergio Perez so much?
The fuck is miles this? Ahead of kind of third and fourth.
No,
I'm the Sergio Perez fan
here.
They
will. Come on, let's lock this in.
Yeah, I think they'll do a better job, and I feel like Leclerc is going to have a good year. He is just incredibly unlucky as well sometimes, and you just think that
he will not
he
be
has
this year.
that in him, and that there may be the odd wobble and stuff, but I think Leclerc's going to deliver like a really good season, and then I think he'll get a win.
W?
Yeah, I think he'll get
2 or 3 wins this year.
I think he will get a win.
In third, Lando Norris. So yeah, Lando Norris P3. I think he's going to have a fantastic year this year. I just think that when that McLaren
he will have his first win. That I will promise.
Works. Lando is unbelievable. Like he showed on so many occasions last year, especially in that second half.
Diamonds.
As soon as that McLaren got good, he led the British Grand Prix. Like McLaren. I know you're listening to this, McLaren. Please give him a good car, because if he gets given one, he will win races and he will get that duck off his back, and it will be great. P2. I wonder what I've gone for. Sergio Perez. He has to have a better year than last year, and I feel like he will, to a degree. I don't think he's going to start winning 10 races this year. The car looks very scary, so that's going to play into Sergio Perez's hands if he's got an even bigger buffer to the teams behind. But yes, I think Perez will secure another double Red Bull 1-2 on the bounce.
I'll do my P2 now because and it will shock you to hear that I've also gone for Sergio Perez. I've seen
why. So weird. Why not? Come on, Charles Leclerc.
I've seen some people put Perez like really low down in predictions and things, and
which is absolutely ridiculous.
I think unless he loses his race seat halfway through the year, like look at last season, right? He finished P2 in the title, and we were still talking about him losing his drive. He had went through that season where he had poor results for quite a few races.
Hulkenberg had more Q3 appearances, and Perez at a certain point in the season that we were talking about, and Perez still finished second in the titles.
I don't think he'll have a bad of a year as he did last year, but there is that advantage that it looks like Red Bull have. So I think Sergio Perez will take second in the title.
And shall we say it together in first position? We have both gone for
Logan.
Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen.
You had to ruin it with Logan Sarge. That's crazy. Just a
it's
little bit of Logie. How did Logie get slander at P1? That's crazy. Max Verstappen, obviously, is the safe bet. I am also incredibly confident. I would bet everything that I own that Max Verstappen's going to win this Drivers' Championship. I hope I theoretically lose everything I own so that someone else can win, but I'm not obviously going to put that on the line.
Yeah, it's so hard to bet against him. Like, it's not a regulation change. You wouldn't know that based on Red Bull changing their entire car.
And he said that the RB20
suits him
does
even more.
everything he wants and it suits him more.
Yeah.
That is the worst sentence a Formula One fan that wants neutral competitive
That's why
racing
Perez will not
can
have
hear.
a good time.
Yeah. In those years where the Red Bull wasn't quite there, he still delivered and got victories, and it was scary to think how good he was going to be when he got that dominant car, and it looks like he's going to get an extremely dominant car, and he doesn't have a day off.
He does not.
He does not. He you know, there's never that
Not
moment
as
where it's
dominant
like, oh,
as last year.
you know, this is he's wrapped up the title. I'm gonna like make it. Like,
Bloke
start
wins
slacking.
19 has 19 wins last year and then pops on iRacing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to win even more.
That's
Crazy.
the level that this guy is at, and yeah, you'd be very silly to bet against him. That is it. That's pretty much sums up our 20th to 1st Drivers' Championship predictions. A big thanks to Silverstone Museum for hosting us here at their incredible venue. Surprisingly, it's at Silverstone. You can come 10% off using our code P1MT. It is a I was like outro.
Okay, I want to see the list. Come on, do they show the both list?
And
will have. So
that Max Verstappen's going to win.
Don't they show both lists at the same time? Why?
That Max Verstappen's going to win this Drivers' Championship. I hope I theoretically lose everything I own so that someone else can win, but I'm not obviously going to put that on the line.
Yeah, it's so hard to bet against him. Like, it's not.
Oh my god, this is annoying. Can we find it somewhere else? Let's see, P1. Nope. Let's see, what can I... Oh, well. We can skip that. But I apparently have more beliefs in Leclerc than the Leclerc fanboy. I mean, a P4. Like, really, you believe in Norris more than Leclerc? When Ferrari looked really good. Like, why? And also, Perez will not have a great time. Let's see, signs. I mean, the only thing, no, I don't think I will change Kevin Magnus. I think he will get more points than Lewis on it still. Do I not believe on Aston Martin? Then let's see, can we get to
everything that I own that Max is the safe bet. I am also incredibly confident I would bet everything that I own that Max Verstappen's going to win this Drivers' Championship. I hope I theoretically lose everything I own so that someone else can win, but I'm not obviously going to put that on the line.
Yeah, it's so hard to bet.
Okay. I'm not Leclerc. What? So the Ferrari fan put him Leclerc at P4, but the more Red Bull fan put him P3. Like, the fuck is happening? Hamilton P4, that will probably not happen. Yeah, nothing interests. No. Yeah, we're done. Okay, we can go to that one. Let's see, is there anything more fun to watch? Oh, we can see the prediction. I believe in Red Bull win, Charles Leclerc P2 and Lando Norris P3 at the Bahrain Grand Prix race. Grand Prix. After the airtime. Let's see. That's the right one, yes. Oh, then we need to...
Our predictions for the 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix.
Wait.
It's race week!
True.
No more BS, no more meh, 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 meh. This is it. The cars will go on the track on Thursday, we'll see practice and we'll learn nothing. But by Saturday, we will figure out just how far Red Bull is ahead.
We sure will. This is the first race of the season. This is the unknown, of course. First race of the season. We don't know anything.
Still unknown.
Let's start off then where we always begin with biggest good surprise.
Lando Norris P3.
For me, I am locking in Lewis Hamilton. We've been on the floor.
Wow, what an interesting thing.
Flop Express these last few weeks.
And
about
this
Mercedes.
is Scorpion.
I think even I think I've predicted him quite low down actually in the Drivers' Championship. Not because I think he's washed or anything like that. I think it's more about Mercedes.
Just
However,
look at
I am going to give Mercedes fans I'm going to believe them for a second because I've seen a screenshot.
They have too much Scorpion. Don't believe them. Believe anything what Mercedes say. So don't believe that.
Of James Allison's face after 3 days of testing, and
happy.
Mercedes fans are so sold that they have learnt more from that one interview than the entirety of 3 days of testing. I've seen also as well that the speed traps, they're really low, if not the slowest cars in the speed trap, and I'm just sat there like, yes, but Mercedes haven't exactly been quick in the speed trap last year either. But apparently that means they're sandbagging. So I think there's going to be a good surprise in Lewis Hamilton.
They're sandbagging
with
for
Mercedes.
2 years.
I've seen, everyone loves to predict like a pecking order, don't they, after testing, and I've seen Mercedes second, I've seen Mercedes sixth, like, who knows?
They're not
That's what I
second.
mean about the hype, like, they could be anywhere. My biggest good surprise, I have gone for
Lando Norris.
Fernando Alonso. I am backing Fernando.
Good boy.
Yeah, obviously, I'm going on biggest good surprise, not compared to last season, where he was obviously incredibly hyped going into the race. I feel like there's a bit of the opposite this year, where everyone just assumes that Aston Martin won't be able to make a good car this year because they fell off towards the end of last year. I don't think anyone would expect Aston Martin to do anything particularly great. I don't think people think they're going to be terrible, but, you know, they're kind of getting predicted as sort of like behind Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari and McLaren. So I am going for Fernando Masterclass. Come on, Fernando.
Hey,
They
biggest flop.
Biggest flop, oh my god. Who could be the biggest flop? I would say Mercedes, but biggest flop. I mean, Haas could be the biggest flop ever.
Now let's see
Or Alpine.
what 2024 biggest flop has to
Oh,
offer
no.
with my predictions. I am going to lock in Esteban Ocon.
Oh, the poor bloke.
My guy
True.
guy delivered for me last year. Every time I flopped him, he flopped. Yes, I don't know. I just feel as though Alpine aren't going to be great anyway. And then that kind of opens up the possibility for some serious floppage. So, yeah.
I'll tell you what, because I'm nice, you get the point anyway if he is biggest flop. But if by some miracle you continue your trend and he breaks his own record of most penalties in the 3rd time you've predicted him, you could have 2 points.
I think I can win the whole season, to be honest with you, if that happens.
It'd be absolutely unbelievable if that happens. Biggest flop, no surprise that I am doing the stupid thing where I just love a team flop, and I'm doing it again.
You haven't learned anything from losing.
No, I haven't learned anything. I've gone for McLaren. I don't think...
Why? This worst opinions.
They're going to be as floppy as last season. That would take some doing. Like you say, the same with your Ocon thing. But I just don't think they've had the test that I thought they might. There's a lot of hype going into it. I think a lot of people thought they might be best of the rest after Red Bull. Can't believe that's now best of the rest, but maybe even like the 2nd quickest team. And I just don't think they've had a particularly good test, and that they might just sort of be like 8th and 9th or something. Yeah, I'm not quite on that McLaren choo-choo train yet.
For some reason.
Let's talk about our special prediction sponsor for this season, Surfshark VPN.
No, go away.
Pole
Leclerc pole position.
Friday's qualifying. Do not forget. Charles Leclerc. My guy, my boy, he's getting pole. Yeah, and I was thinking about this. Usually Saturdays are the day for Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. Saturday is the race. Let's see who I've predicted as to win Saturday's race. But for Friday, I genuinely think Ferrari are the 2nd fastest team.
They are.
Similarly to last year, and are able to get pole. It feels like that's in the waters. And I'm not delusional. I promise. Maybe.
You are not.
I don't know.
Pole position,
But
I've gone for
that's
Max Verstappen. I just knew that you were going to do that.
He starts 2024 off.
Look.
Boring.
Well, I'm looking. You better not predict him for the win then.
You better not predict him for a double. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we'll see.
Oh. Do you think about some reliability issues? Sorry. Okay, go on.
It could be close. I think, Ferrari would, if they're going to do it, qualifying. We know how good they are in qualifying. Charles Leclerc in particular. So I was very tempted. But look, you predicted Charles, so I'll just have to throw a wild card and go different and go Max Verstappen.
Yeah, what a curveball that is to go for Max Verstappen. Let's get into our top 3 then. In 3rd position, I am locking in Sergio Perez.
No, Lando Norris.
Podium, but I am smelling he is going to be quite far off Verstappen again this year. I've seen some Helmut Marko slander already, which is not ideal if you're Perez, about him getting out of his head, getting Max out of his head and just running his own plan or something like that. I think the car will still be unbelievable. Perez will have a great shot at even maybe potentially 2nd, but I think he'll finish 3rd.
I literally can't work out where Perez is going to be, if it is going to revert to the start of last year where he is kind of in that like easy 2nd place, or if he is going to be, amongst the rest of it. I have
17th.
Yeah, maybe behind Hulkenberg. I have doubled down and gone for P3, Fernando Alonso.
Wow.
Yeah, it's bold. It is very bold. But
is this coming with some chaos here, or do you genuinely think pace 3rd place for Alonso?
A bit of pace, a bit of just Alonso being a boss. I am on the delusion.
You've been having some wet dreams about Fernando Alonso, haven't you? That is crazy.
Look, if I'm going to be boring and go for max pole position, I've got to throw a bit of a curveball in there and do something interesting. So, Fernando Alonso
Lando
P3.
Norris P3 is
Come on.
Interesting.
2nd place,
Charles Leclerc.
So it'll be another pole to non-win edition.
No. What would that be?
I can see it in my mind. I don't care, to be honest with you. I think he has 24 poles.
If he does what you say, that would be.
He has 23 poles.
Yeah, so it'd be a 24th pole.
And he has 5
still
wins.
5 wins, yeah. Ouch.
That is actually horrific. That was worse reading than what I remember, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is actually.
I just think Red Bull are going to have exactly the same advantage as they had last year. But yeah, Charles Leclerc 2nd.
For P2, I have gone for
not 100%.
Carlos Sainz. Yep. Gone for the different Ferrari driver for P2.
How? Man, det är kopian om Carlos Sainz alltså.
I'm just...
Yeah. Oh, different.
not?
Wait,
Different.
so you've was that a spoiler then? Are you trying to say there's only one Ferrari driver on the podium?
No, we'll find out. You never know.
Oh my God, Tommy. I'm getting hot under the collar right now.
Yeah, I've gone for Carlos. I think he'll be fired up. Yeah, like you say, I think he maybe is a bit underrated and can have a good race. He'll be there with Charles, I think, again. And it'll be a close fight between them, I think, for quite a lot of the year. So, yeah, excited for the race, and I'm going a bit different.
First position, Max Verstappen. I had to get him then at least once. You know what I mean? Like, I need to get a point here because I've been chefing a little bit with that Charles Leclerc pole, and yeah, need to get that point. So, yeah, thank you very much. I don't even need to explain. What do I need to explain? It's Max Verstappen. He won 19 last year. Red Bull won every single race apart from one. Max Verstappen's going to win the Bahrain Grand Prix.
P1, I've gone for Max Verstappen.
Oh, what?
I know. Ruined it at the end.
I thought you were going to say Ferrari 1-2.
Charles Leclerc, yeah, that'd be wild.
2022 all over again.
I know. There is part of me that thinks that, yeah,
that would not happen.
Maybe the car is fast but unreliable and there could be an issue, but I don't know, like, it's so hard to bet against him in that first race, especially now the Bahrain curse has been broken by him last year.
Oh yeah, that well-known powerful
thing that did go on for years, to be fair.
And then Max was like, I don't care.
Yeah, he's like, this is silly. I personally don't think it's going to be like a walkover, we say, but we'll find out.
Ooh, but you haven't put Charles Leclerc on the podium. What happens to Charles, please?
Well, we'll find out.
Tell me he's finishing the race.
Maybe, or he might have like a bit of an issue.
What do you mean?
A little poetry in motion pit stop, maybe.
Well, you better be tuning into Twitch, because if that happens, my PC is going directly.
It will not happen. Don't worry.
We'll see about
it
that
will
one.
Be
Thank you,
P2.
Tommy. Thanks for believing in Charles. Let's go to our one crazy prediction, and mine is Max will win the race by less than 15 seconds. Yeah. Yeah. I just think that either one, Red Bull don't turn their engine on much, or two, it genuinely is closer. But either or, Max is not dominating the Bahrain Grand Prix. Max is going to dominate the Bahrain Grand Prix, isn't he?
My prediction, crazy prediction, is Max wins by 3 minutes. No, it's not.
That's not crazy.
It's not crazy though, is it? Yeah, we're all doing the same thing here. So I've gone for that the RB20 has a mechanical problem during the race weekend.
During the race weekend.
Yeah. So Perez brake fire in practice.
Nah, that's outrageous.
Well, the car doesn't break down very often, so look, just gotta cover it. It's a wide, you know.
A wide thing, but I guess we need to stipulate if Perez, you know, is just in the garage and they're working on his car a little bit. That it has to be out on track. You know what I'm saying? Like, then I'll accept it. You know, he's got a puffy.
No, you can't say that. Like if he's failing to get out the garage and there's a problem, yeah, fair. But like, I'm not gonna claim it if like they missed the start of quali by like a minute.
Kära besserwissrar och trendexperter. Vi vet att kök inte får se röriga ut. Att det kan bli för mycket av det goda och att man inte ska blanda stilar. Just därför är vi glada att ingen frågade er. Epok, ditt kök, dina regler.
That was too long.
Because they're like screwing his wheel nuts.
Neither am I. Okay, just so you know, neither am I. So there we go. We've got the terms and conditions out there. And finally, 3 crazy predictions from you wonderful lot. Reply to the graphic that we post on Twitter or Instagram if you want to be featured next time. First up is M. Lawrence. Both Mercedes DNF. Don't know why, just vibes. Well, that goes against what I believe is going to happen. So interesting.
This is fucking Minecraft music. Yep.
Jerep Tujula, double Q3 for Stake.
That's bold.
That is enormously bold. They've seen Zhou third in day 3 of practice testing and gone, yep.
They're
to be fair, Bottas did cook last year. You know what I'm saying? Bottas was really good.
They were actually quite good last year at the start. Alpha. You just never know what they're going to do.
Yeah,
maybe.
Let's see what Stake manages to muster up. And finally, Esti Bestie 8. The Ferraris and Mercs are a lot closer to Red Bull than we think, and it's a 3-way fight.
Remove Mercedes is McLaren. Oh wait, did you say?
For the win.
Yes,
That's the win. Fight for the win. More than we think, and it's a three-way to muster up. And finally, Esti Bestie 8. The Ferraris and Mercs are a lot closer to Red Bull than we think, and it's
he wrote wrong. He should be McLaren.
A three-way fight for the win.
Yes,
that
please.
Sounds like you're sleeping, Esti Bestie 8, but I want a piece of that dream, and to make it reality, yes, please, as long as the Ferraris are ahead of the
And you're wrong,
Mercedes
it's going to be
today.
Fernando, but we'd take
We'll
it.
still give him
wouldn't
the point, even if it's a three-way fight for the win, right? Wouldn't we? Like,
well, I think we'd give him about 20 points if it's a three-way fight for the win. We'd absolutely love
Fair.
it, and I hope they're
Not
right.
the freeway,
right,
but
that
two-way.
is it. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to the first predictions podcast of the year. Let us know your predictions on social media. We love to see them. And yes, we're back. Content coming out of our ears, both on P1 and Wheel Knowledge. And also, do not forget, P1 live show tickets are still available. It's the middle of
True. Oh shit. Quiet. Then, do we have anything more fun to watch? Oh, make sure 10 minutes of the race. Let's see if they say anything interesting. Oh shit. Like that, and then
Just like that, F1 testing is over for 2024, and 3 packed days of running made pre-season extremely interesting for us on the ground in Bahrain. Some lessons are learned more quickly than others in testing, but all help piece together the picture ahead of the new season. So what do we know now that we didn't at the start of the week?
Visa Cash App RB can maybe be good, better than Alpine. What's more? Ferrari look good again. What more? Red Bull copying Mercedes.
Ferrari topped testing, with Carlos Sainz leading Charles Leclerc for a Ferrari 1-2 in the overall times. While it would be overdoing it to anticipate a repeat of that result in the Bahrain Grand Prix, the Ferrari SF24 does appear to be the closest challenger to Red Bull. Based on deeper analysis of the times, the pace difference looks to be in the region of 3 to 4 tenths of a second, and with the potential for the waters to be muddied by conditions, engine modes and fuel loads, Ferrari is possibly within striking distance. The Ferrari drivers weren't big fans of last year's car, but the 2024 machine is far more to their liking. Given they jumped in the car last year and immediately knew it was going to be a tough season, that's a significant turnaround. As Ferrari's technical director Enrico Cardile puts it, the car is now more drivable and predictable. That's
something Mercedes almost said. You feel like a car now. Man,
big deal for Ferrari, which has been steadily chipping away at improving these tendencies since last year. What's more, it should also mean its race pace is better, given that improved stability will mean the tyres are treated better and should suffer from less degradation. The race runs in Bahrain testing suggested Ferrari is not in bad shape in that regard. Now it's just a question of adding performance faster than Red Bull can to close the gap, because the whole paddock does think there is a gap, potentially one bigger than in 2023. Red Bull's headline pace was clearly deceiving, and even its long-run work seemed to be disguised by something, most likely a very conservative engine mode. Max Verstappen could barely hide his satisfaction with how this week has gone, in a textbook example of the cliched, the best has just got better.
Hype.
The messaging from Mercedes after the Bahrain test was gently positive, with talk of a solid foundation, useful days and genuine progress. Most importantly, as George Russell put it, Mercedes now is confident it has a very good base to build from, while Lewis Hamilton described...
Yeah, after 2 years they finally made something that they can actually build on. The hype is real for them to be good again.
The car as much nicer to drive and a clear improvement. So the glory days are back for Mercedes?
No.
Well, not yet. But the crucial thing is that Mercedes...
The glory days is to have a car that they can actually do something with.
Only has a car it expects can be consistent and respond to development. That's been severely lacking over the past 2 years. The drivers are confident thanks to the changes to the mechanical platform that can now be made to work better with the aerodynamic performance of the car. That's not just about the visually obvious change to the pushrod rear suspension, but greater anti-dive at the front and anti-squat at the rear to keep the car more balanced in extreme states of heavy braking, acceleration and high speed. Mercedes even showed off the extent to which it can run anti-dive at the front by switching the upper wishbone rear leg to a lower mounting point during the test. Trackside engineering director Andrew Shovlin claims the handling flaws of last year's car are gone and that a number of its troubles are now behind the team. Mercedes isn't back on top, but what matters is now it has something it can work with rather than endlessly floundering trying to make the best of an erratic car. McLaren's test was hit with a couple of time-consuming issues. A problem in the fuel tank led to a delay on day 2 while it was investigated, and a clutch issue had to be assessed on day 3. It meant McLaren had a far from prolific test, with only Williams completing fewer laps, and headline lap times, of limited use though they might be, did not paint McLaren as an immediate threat to the top 2 teams. That was reflected in the team's public stance too. McLaren Racing CEO Zak Brown told us that Red Bull's in the clear and Ferrari is best of the rest, while Lando Norris bluntly said in the press conference on the final day that McLaren is far behind both those teams. It's probably a similar situation at Aston Martin, which has had eye-catching moments trackside, but also some that suggested his trailing Ferrari in particular in that best of the rest group. This wasn't the kind of jaw-droppingly good test that heralded Aston Martin as a real dark horse 12 months ago, but there were no red flags, literally or internally, which suggests Aston Martin should be threatening the lead group even if it's not in the thick of it. The same drain cover coming loose on the outside curb approaching turn 11 was a frustrating interruption for the teams this week, twice.
Yep, and they have now fixed that, hopefully.
First, the broken...
Or they have done something. What's gone? They completely removed it.
Parts were re-welded on day 2. When it broke again on day 3, the whole structure was reinforced. Both disruptions caused driving and, less importantly, media schedules to be rejigged. But there's a race here next week, so while both temporary solutions held firm for a day of testing, a more permanent fix is needed. It could be gloriously simple.
Oh shit, this is maybe before they actually done that.
Remove the drain entirely, fill the area with concrete and paint it as required. That had not been decided by the end of the test, but it was the preferred choice.
Sounds like
While it
they've
seems
already
drastic,
done that.
it's also quite pragmatic. Drainage isn't exactly critical here, even though it did rain for the recent F2 test. The FIA will also assess whether anything has changed in how drivers are using that part of the track and runoff compared to last year. There was a feeling that for some reason drivers were opening up the entry to turn 11 more than before, whether it's car setups facilitating that or just more drivers realising they can do it. More cars running over the drain could explain why the drain braking suddenly became a problem. Alpine for once delivered on expectations in pre-season testing. Unfortunately, those expectations had been managed, so a slow start was expected, but that does not give the team a get-out-of-jail-free card. Being in the back group is simply not good enough for a works team, and that's where Alpine looks to be based on testing. Team principal Bruno Ferman described Alpine as being in the middle performance-wise, but also pointed out that the middle comprises a lot of teams. And right now, Alpine appears to be lower middle at best, with a car that doesn't look convincing from trackside either. Pierre Gasly admitted it's not going to be an easy start and stressed developing the car for more performance is key for the early races. There are upgrades planned, with parts that ideally would have been on the start of season car due after a few races, and what's characterised as a big change in concept, thanks to major changes in the mechanical platform, will take time to understand. But there's still a lot to do for Alpine to get to an acceptable level, even with a car in which everything is claimed to have been redesigned to push the boundaries. Ferman is making the right noises by talking about the target not being an arbitrary results-based one, but instead focused on improving the team and the car. That's a constructive approach and could pay off in the long term, but right now Alpine is well below where a team of its resources should be. Arguments about the terribly named RB squad raged through testing, given complaints about its relationship with sister team Red Bull, but the team itself just quietly got on with doing a good job. Depending on how you slice and dice the numbers, RB is either in the back of the second group chasing Red Bull, or it's ahead of the group at the back. Either of those scenarios is a good place to be for the team. Daniel Ricciardo was optimistic, hoping that he'll be able to fight for a place in Q3 in the Bahrain Grand Prix. But the team suspects it has edged away from the back group, and it has a car that looks consistent on track and is working well. So is it just a copy of last year's ball-conquering Red Bull RB19? Well, no. Yes, it uses the 2023 Red Bull suspension front and rear, as well as the gearbox, but there are aerodynamic differences. As Ricciardo puts it, no, it's not that car. Instead, it's all about building on the progress made in the closing stages of last season, and if RB has indeed done that, then its performance should be a lot more convincing than its half-baked name. An underwhelming test for Haas was hardly unexpected, but it was clearly exaggerated by the team's run plan. Haas has been so focused on trying to get on top of its tyre management problems of last year and collecting the right kind of data to guide its development in 2024 that over the first 2 days it was several seconds off the pace. Not because the VF24 is a total shed, but because long runs were the order of the day. That was so productive that day 3 ended up a bonus combination of extra long run work and some lower fuel testing, but with a twist. Instead of dialing in the car to something approaching a qualifying setup, Haas worked backwards from its race setup. By day 3, Haas was cautiously optimistic it had made progress with its 2023 issues with the launch spec of the 2024 car and got itself into a decent setup window for next weekend's race. To avoid spoiling that, its low fuel work was done by only adjusting the setup within the confines of what it can do in Parc Fermé conditions on a race weekend, so minor adjustments like the front wing, for example. It means Haas should go into next weekend with some unknowns about its qualifying pace and what its car needs over one lap, but in a much better place to, hopefully, eliminate the chronic problems that made its Sunday so futile in 2023.
We'll see if they have done that.
Look back to F1 pre-season testing of ages past, and often there would be a team in crisis with an unreliable, slow car. The classic example in recent times is Williams in 2019, which hit the track late, then spent the season in a class of its own, well off the back of the field. In 2024, no team is even close to that. That's partly because of F1's current financial health, aided by the cost cap. As Alpine team boss Bruno Ferman puts it, there are no more small teams. There's a group of teams reckoned to be at the back though, and that seems to comprise Williams, Alpine, Sauber and Haas. But as Sauber technical director James Key says, the broad range of test programmes make it difficult to judge the exact order. And given the gap between that group and those ahead is small, it won't take much for teams to move up the order. Sauber itself has a car that's a big step forward from last year. The Williams is a much less capricious car than it was, and even Haas, expected by most to be at the back, has a solid, consistent car and doesn't look to be cast adrift. In short, there's no team at panic stations, which makes the first race a fascinatingly competitive proposition, at least behind Red Bull.
Can you say about this? The Mercedes has something to build on, but that's hoping that they will actually succeed with it. The drains look like they have fixed it. Alpine main disappointment. Probably. The second Rebel, yes. And Haas is they should leave. See, and then we can go. Oh, let's see this. Quiet. I don't want to see that. Let's see their prediction. See, that's right, yes.
It's our favourite time of year when we emerge from the settling dust of pre-season testing to take a stab at ranking the 10 Formula 1 teams ahead of the new campaign. This is based on a number of factors, including but not limited to what we saw trackside, how the long run data looks, and where the teams themselves think they are shaking out. We've talked to loads of drivers and senior figures, crunched the numbers and, yes, made some educated guesses to come up with this ranking. It's a snapshot of the order as we saw it at the end of 3 days of testing in Bahrain, not a definitive prediction for the season opener. But enough with the caveats. Let's get into our ranking and let us know yours in the comments. New team principal Io Komatsu predicted his squad would be at the back.
Yeah, we have that up, so we can go to that when they are done.
If not last at the start of the season. And though testing largely supported that hypothesis, if Haas is last, it would be surprising if it is detached from the field. This car has been limited by resources being devoted to a late 2023 Haas upgrade that was largely ineffective at solving its main tyre chewing problem in season. But that did at least lay the groundwork for this car, and it seems like an improvement. Kevin Magnussen, who struggled with last year's car characteristics, feels this one is more consistent on high fuel and says he can trust the car more from break-in to turn into mid-corner. Haas did almost nothing but long runs for the first 2 days of testing as it bid to learn as much as possible about the car and its tyre usage, and completed more laps than any team in the process. It's cautiously optimistic it has made progress, but is keeping its expectations modest, and so are we, given it still looked a bit less competitive on the long runs compared to the low fuel work it eventually completed. Alpine at least ran reliably during testing, which it hasn't always historically, although it was still only 8th in terms of laps covered. And that's about the only positive for the team. That set the slowest time of the test, was in the back group based on long run pace, didn't complete a full race simulation, and looks least well prepared. The car is understood to be overweight, hence the paired back livery. It was also second slowest in the speed traps, without the corner performance needed to offset that, which the weight won't help with. It also hints at the car carrying a little too much drag on top of being slightly down on power. From trackside, it looked like the least sorted car, with the drivers having to work hard behind the wheel. As Pierre Gasly said, it's going to take some time to unlock performance. Alpine had managed expectations at its launch, but even so, a works team looking like a strong candidate to exit Q1 is disappointing. Given the team seems so underperforming, it wouldn't be a surprise if even Haas turns out to be ahead. Alpine has early season upgrades planned which aim both to reduce the weight and add aerodynamic performance. But even if upgrades, or a big step for the Bahrain Grand Prix, lift it to around where it was last year, so 6th best, that's still not good enough for a works team. While Sauber is still in the back group, judging by its long run pace, the performance of the car in testing was positive.
They really put Alpine on number 9? What? And there are more beliefs in Stay Kick Sauber F1 team.
But is still in the back group, judging by its long run pace, the performance of the car in testing was positive. As Valtteri Bottas explained, the big weaknesses of last year, rear instability in high-speed corners and relatively high drag, have been improved upon dramatically. That's a big positive because that correlates exactly with what Sauber's various simulation tools indicated. That means the major change from pushrod to pull rod front suspension appears to have given Sauber greater control of the mechanical platform. The Sauber C44 was the 3rd fastest car on single lap pace thanks to Zhou Guanyu's day 3 pace on C4 Pirellis. That's despite technical director James Key saying the team had taken a conservative under the radar approach. While the Sauber started off looking a little unstable at times from trackside, once the setup was fettled, it looked like a good, predictable and consistent car. That's a good step forward from last year and means it has a good platform to build on, even if Q2 will likely be the limit of its ambitions at race 1. The test was looking middling or maybe even slightly underwhelming for Williams until day 3, when a few things came together better and vaulted it, in our view, to the top of a very close cluster of 4 teams in the lower midfield. 2 stoppages on day 1 put Williams on the back foot, and you never make up that time in testing. Especially with so much to learn about a new car with different characteristics, some new unspecified weaknesses to replace the old ones, and that needs to be driven differently to its predecessor. Correlation seemed good though, so Williams was cautiously optimistic, and by day 3 that translated into a more complete and more encouraging picture, especially in terms of race pace. Alex Albon reckons Williams has a decent car to go racing with, having made big headway on the final day. There is still a lot to learn, but with a few days to dig into the data and a hint of some upgrades at the opening race, we think Williams starts the season with a good platform to at least consolidate its finishing position from last year. The RB VCarb 01 may have a terrible name, but testing suggests it has a handy turn of speed.
What's bad with the name? It's Visa, Cash App, RB. It's like
in what appears to be
one of the best
field,
names
the
ever
is
made
whether it will
in
end up
Formula
snapping
1.
up the heels of the group chasing Red Bull or just
It's
holding
like
off the
part
group
of
of four
the
teams at the
Ferrari.
back. What is obvious is that this is a good car. It uses the 2023 Red Bull RB19 suspension front and rear, which is a gain in terms of that all-important platform control. However, the car is far from a Red Bull clone. Instead, it's an evolution of this team's own increasingly competitive machine of the back end of last year. Technical director Jody Eggington predicts a much stronger start to the season thanks to these gains. The car looked very consistent from trackside, and its long-run pace suggests it can slot in somewhere in the middle of the pack. Daniel Ricciardo's target is being at the front of the midfield, pitching for a Q3 place and points finishes. Yuki Tsunoda set a quick lap late on in testing using the C4 Pirellis, putting it 5th fastest on the timesheets of the 10 teams. It would be a surprise if it wasn't somewhere similar come Bahrain qualifying. Aston Martin hit the ground running at this test with a car that, as it did 12 months ago, looked well balanced. And the team was really happy with how the test went, according to team principal Mike Kraft. We're not tipping Aston Martin for a repeat of its giant killing exploits at the start of 2023, but we definitely think it's more in the mix than how it ended last year. It wasn't exactly a coin flip with McLaren, but it was very close. And if you judge it solely on a Day 3 Fernando Alonso long run, you could even have this team troubling Mercedes and Ferrari. The Aston Martin looks quick on the straights, which suggests an improvement in the drag issue that Alonso disliked so much last year and performed consistently. It looks as though the team really has understood and moved on from the issues that emerged through 2023. Technical director Dan Fallows feels that prioritising some items to make the AMR24 good to drive for Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll has paid off. Fallows is also happy with the step made in development in general, but the real test is how this car responds to upgrades, given last season's disappointing inability to push on.
It will respond better than Mercedes.
McLaren had a disrupted test and didn't get through all the running it wanted, but reckons its car is delivering what was expected. It also has a good foundation for development. Some parts didn't make the launch car, but these are more like upgrades to cash in on development potential, as team boss Andrea Stella puts it, rather than missed targets for the launch spec like last year. In terms of what McLaren has right now, there is some initial progress in quelling the biggest lingering weaknesses from last year. Oscar Piastri felt the slow speed characteristics have improved, but it seems there are still deficits in this area and others. That, plus the fact it took McLaren a bit longer to dial in its car this week, fits with Stella's suggestion that Bahrain doesn't ideally suit the MCL38 after its predecessor thrived more on high-speed circuits. All of this might be why McLaren seem to struggle a bit more than its best of the rest rivals on long runs too. Lando Norris reckons it is definitely behind Ferrari and maybe Mercedes too, at least in Bahrain. Our gut feeling is it shouldn't be behind Aston Martin though, and if it is, it could be marginal and track specific. The good news is that this was comfortably the best pre-season testing for Mercedes since the current regulations were introduced. The long run pace looks good, potentially strong enough to give Ferrari something to think about. However, as technical director James Allison admitted, there's still some work to do on qualifying pace. That's to be expected given the scale of the changes made to the car, particularly in terms of the mechanical platform. That means Mercedes is still working on fully understanding the W15 and conducting experiments that will be impossible to do once the season starts. That includes the drastic change to the
I would say I believe more McLaren than Mercedes.
anti-dive level on the front suspension on the final day, achieved by moving the rear leg of the upper wishbone to a lower mounting point. More importantly, the drivers are much more confident in a car that now has a far more stable rear end in the medium and high speed corners. The
Yeah, after 2 years.
lack of a full-blown race simulation makes it difficult to judge the pace of the W15 precisely. However, Mercedes didn't look far off by day 3. The big question is how quickly Mercedes will be fully on top of the car and how consistently it can extract the pace from something that at least looks far removed from the troublesome cars of the past 2 years. Based on what we believe Red Bull is holding back, Ferrari doesn't look as quick. Despite topping the timesheets and despite Carlos Sainz's encouraging race simulation on day 2 that was significantly quicker than Sergio Perez's. But Ferrari does appear to be Red Bull's leading challenger with a car that looked around 4 tenths off on long run pace. What matters most for Ferrari is that the car is working well. Both drivers were far happier with the feel and consistency of the 2024 car, and what's more, the tyre degradation problems of last year
Charles Leclerc
appear to be a thing of the past. This means the Ferrari should race better than it did last year, when it invariably struggled to match its strong qualifying form. And while it may be asking a little too much of Ferrari to be a Red Bull beater in Bahrain, it's close enough to give Red Bull something to think about. And as Charles Leclerc pointed out, it also has a platform for development that could allow it to become a bigger threat as the season progresses. Red Bull is the overwhelming favourite for several good reasons. The car looked great on track, did competitive lap times with ease despite suggestions of high fuel performance runs and a heavily detuned engine on long runs, and had the team not even bothering to hide how happy it was with how the test went. Lots of mileage meant lots of reliability validation and setup work, and while it would be easy to say, well, of course last year's dominant car is still the best, remember, this has had a lot of work done to it. Red Bull could have tripped itself up with its new ideas for 2024 or produced a car that needed more time to be optimised. It has hit the ground running with a significantly evolved car concept that can be taken even further based on the suggestion of early season upgrades. We'd be surprised if the look of the car alters dramatically, but however different the car is visibly at the first race or into the season, we'd be absolutely stunned if it's not the benchmark.
Okay, yeah, true. The only thing I will see, we can change that. Go. Let's see, they have Haas in the bottom, true. Then Alpine, I really don't see that. I can see they being worse than Visa Cash Up RB, but more than that, no. Then Stake, Sauber, Kick, F1. Then Williams. Then you have, yeah, true. Then Aston Martin, yes. McLaren, I believe more in McLaren. Like Mercedes, they are gone. And yeah, Ferrari and Red Bull in the top. Is this anything more interesting? Yeah, this is a must watch.
What is it?
Not that. The Dobbs hanging over Mercedes in 2024. That's so true. Can the ad begun? Next ad. Hype.
Mercedes has
yeah, there's big dubs. I mean, 2 years and they still.
Mercedes has finally cracked Formula One's ground effect regulations, or has it?
After 2
That's
years.
The big question heading into the 2024 season,
really
after the best pre-season for Mercedes since the rules changed. There have to be doubts, given there have been so many false dawns over the past 2 troubled seasons. And as we'll explain in this video, there are some important unanswered questions, even after an encouraging test. But what has changed? Well, as team principal Toto Wolff says, in both 2022 and 2023, testing left Mercedes on the back foot, heading into the first race of the season. But after 3 days of pre-season testing this year, the feeling in the team is dramatically different and far more positive. That's because the Mercedes W15 correlates well with the expectations based on the various simulation tools used to design and develop it, is giving the drivers confidence, and appears to give the team the foundation for development it lacked in previous years. Technical Director James Allison calls it definitely a much better born car than the year before. From the start of testing, it was clear the drivers were much happier with the car. George Russell said it is not the diva that it was before. The problem last year was the lack of confidence in the rear end in the medium and high speed corners, but compared to that, both drivers feel the W15 is more consistent and therefore easier to drive. With that fundamental problem eliminated, this means Mercedes at last has what Lewis Hamilton characterises as a platform it can build on with upgrades this season.
And actually a car to drive.
Sheets carry little weight in testing, the Mercedes was the second fastest car, behind only the Ferraris of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. More impressive was the Mercedes long run pace that also put it close to Ferrari, which is expected to be Red Bull's nearest challenger. The car being brisk isn't in itself cause for celebration, but the fact that the Mercedes W15 appears to have put the ill-handling and capricious tendencies of 2022 and 2023 behind it is a big positive. Trackside engineering director Andrew Shovlin is adamant Mercedes has put a number of the handling flaws of last year behind it. If that's correct, then Mercedes should be able to add performance through development and close the gap to Red Bull, provided there aren't any undetected weaknesses waiting to bite. So what don't we know about the Mercedes W15? Well, while there were some promising long-run signs, it was one of only 2 teams not to complete a full-blown race simulation. The other was troubled Alpine. This means that on top of the usual doubts about engine mode, track conditions, strategies, etc., we still don't really know where Mercedes stacks up. Mercedes also hasn't had time to fettle the car to maximise qualifying pace. As Allison admitted, we've got a bit more work to do on the single laps. That's because the focus was on understanding the new car. In particular, that means the new suspension characteristics after changes designed to improve the mechanical platform. This meant Mercedes was working through some major setup changes during testing. This included the experiments with the level of anti-dive run on the front suspension. Anti-dive increases the resistance of the front suspension to the significant weight shift under braking, preventing compression and keeping the mechanical platform more stable. That's great for the aerodynamics. With anti-dive already increased with the basic geometry, Mercedes also experimented with moving the rear leg of the upper front wishbone into a lower position to add even more. That was a major change, but Mercedes felt it was worth trying in order to gain data to define the optimum way to run the car. Inevitably, that means the team has yet to build a full understanding of this new platform, which means it could yet produce a few surprises. From trackside, the car also didn't look quite as composed as the Red Bull or the Ferrari.
Yeah, sure.
While it worked well, there were hints of instability that might well simply be a consequence of a less well-refined setup as Mercedes conducted experiments. But there is the possibility that while this car is much more consistent than last year, it's still giving a little away in this area. The key question is whether Mercedes does have what Wolf calls a good foundation to build on. The early indications are good, but there's always the danger that in such a different car concept, there are unknown problems waiting to cause trouble. It's a case of so far so good for Mercedes, but there's still plenty that could go wrong, even though the signs are positive. And we still don't really know how fast the car is compared to the opposition. Mercedes' happiness is rooted in solving the problems that held it back last year. The trouble is, it has been here before. Sort of. Remember when it surprised the world by launching the Mercedes W14 last year? Despite the problems of 2022, it looks similar to the old car with its infamous zero-pod design. And there were reasons for that decision, albeit ones that proved to be based on ultimately flawed logic. As Allison admitted late last year, this was all because Mercedes underestimated the problem with rear-end instability and believed it to be wrapped up in the porpoising and bouncing problems of the year before. As he said of the driver feedback, we were not listening to them telling us they didn't like the turn-in instability. That wasn't because they didn't value what the drivers said, simply that they assumed it would be fixed with porpoising and bouncing troubles eliminated. The warning there is that it is possible to overlook other problems when you have a major weakness. So although the mechanical platform has improved in 2024 with greater rear stability and driver confidence, there's the ever-present risk that some other nastiness might be lurking, waiting to catch Mercedes out. There was no sign of that in testing, but just because you've solved your biggest problem doesn't always mean it will be plain sailing. What's more, Mercedes has to be wary of the false dawns that have punctuated its last 2 seasons. Time and again, it has been tricked into believing a breakthrough has been made. The improved form in Spain in 2022, the victory in Brazil later that year, and its pace in last year's United States Grand Prix before being excluded are just some of the examples of this.
Yeah,
Mercedes
so beautiful.
cannot afford a repeat. Coming back to the 2024 car, how did Mercedes achieve these gains? The answer was major architectural changes. Although the process of fixing the worst vices of its F1 cars began with the upgrade introduced in Monaco last May, that was always limited by the unchangeable aspects of the car, so the gearbox, rear suspension and monocoque. There's now a new chassis, with the cockpit opening moved rearwards 10 centimetres. That's something Lewis Hamilton called for, although Allison is adamant that being sat too far forward wasn't the reason for the lack of confidence in the rear end that the 7-times world champion felt. The cockpit move was possible partly because the zero-pod design had long since been ditched, allowing the side impact structures to be relocated with this year's car. there was also a change to push-rod rear suspension. This is reckoned by most to be the ideal configuration under F1's current regulations, with only Ferrari, and therefore customer Haas, sticking with the pull rod by choice. Williams also has a pull rod configuration, but that's because it has stuck with the 2023 specification Mercedes suspension. For Mercedes, this change opens up greater aerodynamic opportunity at the rear by moving suspension internals to the top of the gearbox.
Yeah, maybe they should have done this 2 years ago.
Creating more space lower down. As well as the aforementioned increased anti-dive at the front, there's also greater anti-squat at the rear. Again, this serves to stabilise the mechanical platform. This combines with significant aerodynamic changes, including a modified nose that now attaches to the second element of the front wing rather than the main plane, allowing cleaner airflow to the front of the floor. There's also a switch to a more letterbox-shaped cooling inlet in order to create space for a more aggressive undercut as part of an overhaul of the side pods and engine cover shape.
Need more glass.
While we've raised plenty of questions, and there are things that could yet trip Mercedes up, there is every chance that it really does have the baseline to work from that it needs. But if that's the case, it's unrealistic to expect it to be at the front beating Red Bull immediately. After all, Red Bull hit upon broadly the right car concept from the start of these regulations, and is now in the third year of these cars, while Mercedes has been forced to change direction significantly. The best case scenario for Mercedes was always likely to be that it had a car it could work with and that the fundamental limitations had been removed from. Testing suggested it might have exactly that, provided there are no unpleasant surprises around the corner. As Wolff says, the main objective for Mercedes was to create a consistent and stable platform that reacted as expected and allowed the drivers to push. The objective after that is that the car is one that can develop throughout the year, bringing real-world performance to the track. Has Mercedes achieved all of these objectives? We don't know yet, but it has made a promising start, and that's already a big improvement on both 2022 and 2023.
Yeah, that's a big improvement, yeah. They're going from not making a bad car. The hype is real. No, nothing more fun there. Let's see. Is there anything fun here? I mean, it could. See what more fun can be done here. More glass is needed to. I need to pick up. I mean, can start the mining. Oh my gosh, so boring. Yeah, that's probably it. So we can see, we can have something interesting to while I'm preparing for the stuff.
Hey guys, Sean here,
Hi.
and welcome to the F1 Word. Now, the brand new F1 season is just a couple of
let's see, almost everything you need to know about F1 2024 and Mercedes to
weeks away now, and a lot, understatement of the year, has happened since the checkered flag fell in Abu Dhabi in November. So, as apparently I now do every year, I'm going to run through some of the big winter stories and some of the info you might need to know ahead of the 2024 F1 season.
Gone.
Now, usually during the off-season, things are pretty quiet when it comes to F1 news, and sites have to rely on Ralf Schumacher or Jacques Villeneuve saying something super edgy so they get their clicks. However, 2024 has been insane, and it's not even the end of February yet, so in case you missed it or need a recap, here is a quick-ish summary of the main winter headlines. First up, Gunther Steiner is no longer at Haas after it was announced in January that his contract was not going to be renewed. A contract that actually expired at the end of 2023, with Gene Haas saying, quote, "Moving forward, it was clear we needed to improve our on-track performances," adding, "We need to be consistent in delivering results that help us reach our wider goals as an organisation." Steiner's position will be filled by the team's now former Director of Engineering, Ao Komatsu. And on the subject of team principles, it should also be said that Christian Horner is still under investigation by Red Bull after a complaint of inappropriate behaviour was made.
Well, maybe when this clip released, but it looks like it's no longer a problem
against him. At time of recording, though, there has been no official word on any decision or conclusion. Two teams announced their new names for this season. They are both absolute bangers in the same way that I'm mega rich and super handsome. Anyway, weird. The team...
So, yes.
Previously known as Alfa Romeo Sauber will now be called Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber. And the Alpha Tauri name has also disappeared, with the team now known as Visa Cash App RB. For the record, I think most people will just call them Sauber and RB for the most part.
No.
It was announced that Lando Norris has signed a multi-year contract extension at McLaren, although...
Stake Sauber Kick is...
Reports on the exact length vary. We do know he is set to drive for the team beyond the end of the 2025 season. Charles Leclerc also extended his stay at Ferrari, but again, we don't know exactly how long that deal is for, with the team saying he will be with them beyond the end of the 2024 season, or perhaps it's safe to say on both counts should be staying with their respective teams, because, well, I'll get to that in a second. It was officially confirmed after many months of speculation that the Spanish Grand Prix will be moving to a new venue from 2026, and that new venue is a part street, part purpose-built track in Madrid, because if there's one thing us F1 fans can agree on, it's that we are all desperate for more solar street tracks on the F1 calendar. In case you didn't catch it, that was sarcasm. Andretti's bid to join the grid was formally rejected by Formula One management because, among other reasons, the commercial rights holder does not believe Andretti would add value to the grid or be a competitive participant.
Oh shit. We can... See, that's right. Yes, need to. There we have it.
The sport, though, has left the door open for a possible...
I mean, why would you want to have Andretti and Cadillac in Formula 1 when you can just have Stake, Sauber, Kick, F1 team and Visa, RB, Cash App, shit.
For entry in 2028 for a team with a General Motors power unit, either as a GM Works team or as a GM customer team, you know, after they've all signed a nice new Concord agreement and sent the entry fee for new teams through the roof. I'm sure that has nothing to do with it whatsoever. Anyway, FOM also claimed that Andretti failed to respond to an invite for a face-to-face meeting between the two parties, with it later being reported that the said invite dropped into the Andretti spam folder and they never saw it, but they would still like to engage in talks with F1. Andretti has, though, said that their work continues at pace and they are proud of the progress they have already made on developing a car and power unit. And finally, for the winter wrap-up, despite signing a new 2-year deal with Mercedes in August last year, Lewis Hamilton is leaving the Silver Arrows at the end of this season and will race for Ferrari alongside Charles Leclerc in 2025. Hamilton agreeing a multi-year deal with the Scuderia. That means Carlos Sainz is now obviously looking for a race seat for next year, and beyond a Mercedes needs a Hamilton replacement. One thing is for sure, this year's silly season is going to be bonkers. And you know, that's a good job really, given how static last year's was. In fact, 2024 will be the first year there are no changes to the driver lineups from the end of the...
Maybe that's true, but it's like, man, it's a big lie. In my opinion. I mean, the change before the season is over. So it's like there was changes. Maybe not from the end of the season to the start of the season, but in the middle.
Previous season. Therefore, this list will not come as much of a surprise to many of you, so I'm going to be super quick with it. Reigning world champion Max Verstappen will still be at Red Bull and is once again joined by Sergio Perez. Lewis Hamilton will be at Mercedes for one final season with George Russell once again alongside him. And Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz remain at Ferrari for one final year together. It is Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri at McLaren for 2024. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll at Aston Martin, and Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon are still together at Alpine. Williams confirmed they were sticking with Logan Sargent for 2024 at the start of December last year, with Alex Albon alongside him for another season. RB have Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda. Sauber kept Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu, and has decided to stick with Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen. Whilst the grid has stayed largely the same this year, what's interesting about all those names, though, is the number of them that are out of contract at the end of this year, and they are officially Perez, Sainz, Alonso, Gasly, Ocon, Magnussen, Hülkenberg, Sargent, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Bottas, and Zhou. Possibly Stroll too, but nobody knows when his contract expires, so maybe not.
Yes,
it is also worth bearing in mind that some of those drivers could have one-year options with their current teams, but like
tomorrow.
I say, those are the official expiry dates, if you like, as I sit here and record this today. We've now seen all 10 cars in their launch spec at least, and all the liveries teams we're running this season. I use the word liveries very loosely in some cases. And yes, I am focusing on liveries in this part because even the teams who launch their real cars will inevitably make changes before testing and the first race. So I personally don't really think there's a lot of point playing spot the difference between 2023 and 2024 cars. Plus, as I'm sure most of you know by now, I have no idea what I'm talking about really when it comes to all that stuff, so I just make myself look very, very stupid. So let's just roll on. Haas revealed their exposed carbon car with accents of colour on February 2nd. That was followed by Williams on Monday the 5th, as they unveiled an evolution of the livery they've run for the last couple of years. Steak with peppercorn sauce. Sauber pulled the covers off their carbon car with accents of colour, and although I'm not a huge fan, one thing is for sure, you are not going to miss it when you're watching on TV, so fair play to them there. Alpine revealed their exposed carbon car with accents of colour on February 7th and boasted rather hilariously two different looks, with the blue featuring at most races, but the pink will be seen at 8 weekends this year. Toro, Alfa, Visa, Rosso, Tauri, Cash App, RB, Minardi painted.
Oh man, come on. It's Visa, Cash App, RB. It's really easy.
Most of their car with a look that is very reminiscent of the lovely Toro Rosso paint job they used to run. It's not perfect or quite as good, but I do still really like it. Aston Martin kicked launch week number 2 off with a mostly painted car in the colours we've come to expect since the team was rebranded. Ferrari launched, brace yourself, a red car on February 13th, and it is, in my opinion at least, the best looking of the bunch. I love the addition of the yellow stripes, and yes, I am massively biased. Mercedes and McLaren both officially launched on Valentine's Day, with the silver arrow showing off a really smart looking livery in a car that a lot of people seem to be getting quite excited
Yeah, copium.
About on Twittex at least. McLaren, who actually showed off their livery in January, have removed all the blue and gone with papaya and carbon as their look for 2024. And last up were champions Red Bull, who, as you'd expect, stuck with their usual livery for the RB20, but took a lot of people by surprise with their apparent change in car philosophy in some areas. I cannot wait to see what they roll out with during testing and at that first race of the season. With launches out of the way, it is on to pre-season testing before the season gets going, and once again, the winter test will be held in Bahrain. The 3-day test starts on Wednesday, February 21st. If you're watching this video when it goes out, that is tomorrow. And each day session will start at 7 AM GMT. You will be able to watch testing live, but if you don't want to listen to Crofty & Co, then you can come and listen to me and Stuart waffling away on this channel from 11 AM UK time until the checkered flag falls every day of testing. And oh wow, will we waffle. Hope to see plenty of you there. Oh, and if it's your kind of thing, Drive to Survive Season 6 starts on Friday, February 23rd on Netflix. Once testing is all out of the way, it'll be time to go racing once again. As has been the case over the last few years, the season will start in Bahrain with a back-to-back with Saudi Arabia, but those weekends will be a little different, with both races taking place on Saturday, March 2nd and Saturday, March 9th, respectively. That means, and a heads up, qualifying will be on the Fridays of those race weekends and practice on the Thursdays. The other standout dates for 2024 include Japan, which has been moved from its traditional October date to April. China returns for the first time since 2019 on April 21st with the...
Let's see. A really important question. Blossom tree blooming. One, two. Minecraft music from November to March. Okay, so it's already. Okay, so nothing to celebrate having in April then, sadly.
European leg minus a brief stop in Canada starting at Imola on May 19th. The summer break starts after the race in Belgium on July 28th, with the season restarting at Zandvoort on August 25th. The race in Baku has moved to September, and after the race in Singapore on September 22nd, there is a month's break before the triple header of the US, Mexico and Brazil race weekends. There is then another break before F1 returns to Vegas on November 23rd, and the start of a season-ending triple header consisting of Vegas, Qatar and Abu Dhabi, which as always closes the season on December 8th. So a packed second half of the year, but I've got to say a little bit stop-start in places. That is, as a reminder, by the way, a record-breaking 24-race season. That's 30 races if we include the sprints.
Been lost, yeah.
The sprint races will be held at
China
6 venues again this year, and they are China, a track we haven't been to since 2019. So that could be very interesting with just the one practice session that weekend. China is joined by Miami, Austria, Austin, Sao Paulo and Qatar as sprint hosts. Now, the weekend formats for sprints will change in 2024 pending World Motorsport Council approval, which should be a formality given it was all agreed by FOM and the FIA. So from this season, sprint weekends will start with a single practice session on, let's say, Friday morning, but the first session on a Friday, you know what I mean by that, and that will now be followed by sprint qualifying on Friday afternoon. The sprint race will take place on Saturday morning ahead of Grand Prix qualifying on Saturday afternoon. The main race, of course, still taking place on Sunday. Honestly, a much better schedule in my opinion. I think it'll just give us a much nicer flow to the weekend. It also means that each session becomes more meaningful as the weekend progresses, as it builds to the crescendo that is Sunday's Grand Prix. I think it'll work well. It is also worth a mention that although it hasn't been officially announced at the time of recording, it is also expected there will be 2 Parc Ferme periods across a sprint weekend, with the first kicking in once the cars leave the garage for sprint quali and ending after the sprint race, with the second starting in Grand Prix qualifying. It means teams will be able to make changes to setups and things like that between the end of the sprint race and Grand Prix qualifying. There are also some tweaks to some existing rules this season, again pending approval from the World Motorsport Council. Firstly, there will be changes to when DRS is made available during all races. Usually, DRS would be switched on, if you like, after the second lap of a Grand Prix. However, from this season, DRS will be made available to drivers within 1 second of the car ahead from the end of the first lap from the race start or after a safety car period. Last season, teams were allowed to use 4 of each of the internal combustion engine, MGUH, MGUK and turbocharger before being slapped with a penalty. Those limits were due to return to 3 this year, but the F1 Commission agreed to increase the limit for each of those components back to 4 for this season as well as in 2025. So, that is 4 of each of those components. And do you know what else F1 cars have 4 of? That's right, tyres. Oh yes, for the first time in 2024, and maybe the last time, who knows, it's tyre talk time.
Ooh,
Let's not do this again, please. This season, we say goodbye to the hardest C0 compound as Pirelli returns to a C1 to C5 range. And those compounds will be the same as in 2023, as the FIA and the manufacturer chose late last year not to introduce new ones for the upcoming season. So it is C1 to C5, and for anyone new to F1, the C1 tyre is the hardest in the Pirelli range and the C5 is the softest. There have also been changes to the right of review process, with teams now having to lodge an appeal within 4 days or 96 hours rather than the previous 14 days, and will now also have to pay a deposit, which they will only get back if their appeal is successful or if the FIA decides it should be returned to the team. And whilst there are other tweaks and additions to the rules, including, for example, cooling scoots being fitted to the cars in hot conditions to keep drivers, well, cool, the bulk of the regulations remain the same as they did last year. That is it then for this one, but you can let me know your thoughts ahead of the new F1 season in the comments section down below. And if you're watching this as it goes out, we are less than 2 weeks away from lights out in Bahrain. I cannot wait. Oh, I love my F1, which is probably a good thing given I've got an F1 related YouTube channel. But anyway,
yeah,
I will be back live on Wednesday. That's tomorrow if you're watching this. It goes out with the first testing stream of 2024. And again, we'll be live with timing and chat every day from 11 a.m. GMT until that checkered flag falls at the end of each day. In the meantime, though, if you did enjoy this one, then please do leave a like and do consider subscribing as well to help me and the channel in its never-ending battle with the YouTube algorithm.
Yeah, testing was...
As ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye. No. Add Oh shit. And then I like that, and then I can whoop, whoop, whoop. And then we can see the washed prediction before we end this stream.
Guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word, and here we go again. The brand new.
Let's see. Pole position, Leclerc win, Max Verstappen, and Leclerc P2, Lando Norris P3.
New F1 season is here, and what better way to kick it off on the channel than with the preview for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Yes, once again, we are starting at the Bahrain International Circuit in Sakir for round 1 of 24 in 2024.
That's a lie.
Very nice indeed. The 5.412 kilometre, 3.36 mile, 15 corner circuit has hosted the opening race of the season every year since 2021. And this weekend will be the 20th Bahrain Grand Prix, although it will actually be the 21st race to be held at the circuit, because as I'm sure you remember, the Sakir Grand Prix was held at the Outer Loop back in 2020. Sergio Perez's first win, of course. The layout itself is unchanged and continues to feature 3 DRS zones, one between turns 3 and 4, another between turns 10 and 11, and one more down the start-finish straight, which, if you recall, was shortened ahead of the race weekend last year. So we'll have to see if they stick with that or make another change. I think it worked quite well in 2023 for the most part. It kind of gave drivers the chance to get alongside each other, but didn't make it too easy to get the move done. Each zone also has its own detection point, which for the millionth time in the last 7 years is absolutely how it should be when it comes to DRS, in my opinion at least. And in case you missed it in last week's Everything You Need to Know video, this season drivers will have access to DRS at the end of the first lap.
Yeah, we will see how that will work out. Hopefully for the better, but man, maybe more crashes will happen now. We will see.
Race start or safety car restart. The forecast for the weekend at time of recording at least is perhaps unsurprisingly for it to be warm and dry, with highs for qualifying of 90 degrees Celsius and 22 degrees Celsius for the race. That is, if it's your thing, 66 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit respectively. And last season in Bahrain, Max Verstappen won the race, something he went on to do a further 18 times in 2023. You know, that still blows my mind even now. But he was joined on the podium last season by his teammate Sergio Perez, who completed a perfect start to the year for Red Bull, with Fernando Alonso taking the final step on the podium. Now, tyre talk segues. Yes, those pesky things. Some of you love them, some of you hate them, and some of you probably don't even care either way. But I've spent some time over the winter looking for a reason not to do these stupid segues this season. But to start the year without one would be a crime. So that's right, folks. It's tyre talk time. Oh yeah, some awful poetry to prove that I'm really running out of ideas for these, so keep an eye on the community section here on YouTube, because I might let you lot do them at times this year or for the rest of the year, we'll see. But anyway, back to the point of tyre talk, that's tyres, and as I went over in the season guide last week, Pirelli has not introduced any new compounds for 2024, and so the compounds available for this weekend are exactly the same as last season in Bahrain, and they are the hard C1, the medium C2, and the soft C3, the hardest 3 in the Pirelli range. When it comes to strategy, the track is fairly abrasive, and degradation will be a big factor this weekend, thermal degradation in particular. So it is highly likely we will see a multi-stop race come Saturday. In fact, every race at the circuit since 2019 has seen the winner pit at least twice during the race, with Charles Leclerc stopping 3 times in 2022. And last year, Max Verstappen won the race with a 2-stopper, starting on the softs before switching to another set of the softs on lap 14, before putting on the hards on lap 36 to take them to the end of the race. It is also worth noting that only Lando Norris ran the medium C2 tyre during last year's race, everyone else sticking to the hards and the softs. And don't forget, whilst there will be 3 practice sessions, only one of those, that's FP2, will be held at the same time of the day as qualifying and the race. So expect a lot of running during the second session on Thursday. Last year's total pit lane loss time, which includes the time it takes to change tyres, was largely between 24 and 26 seconds. And each of the last 8 races at the circuit have featured at least one full or virtual safety car period, which of course could have a big impact on strategy.
Känns lite som vi sitter och väntar på att dö. Det är inte som det var
förr.
Om du hjälper mig att ta ner honom till Frankrike och så ser vi till att han upplever allt det där han älskar, då kan han få livsgnistan tillbaka. Hon säger kanske att man ska inte återskapa det som har varit. Varför inte då? För man är rädd att bli besviken. Det kan vara halt här. Halt är det fan inte.
Gör ditt viktigaste val idag. Lista dig hos Kry.
No, I will not.
And the schedule for this weekend is a little bit different to what we're used to seeing. In fact, this will be the first time since the 1982 South African Grand Prix that the season opener has been held on a Saturday. Yes, I know Vegas last year was on a Saturday, but that was not the season opener, far from it. Why is the season starting on a Saturday, though?
Ramadan hype.
Well, Ramadan begins on Sunday, March 10th, which is the day the race in Saudi Arabia would normally take place. And with F1 regulations stating there must be at least 7 days between races, both Grand Prix need to start a day earlier than usual this year. So what I'm still calling the weekend will start on Thursday morning, with FP1 getting the season underway from 11:30 AM GMT, and FP2 starts at 3 PM later that afternoon. The third and final practice session is from 12:30 PM on Friday, with qualifying underway from 4 PM. And it will be lights out for the race on Saturday. That's Saturday, not Sunday. Saturday at 3 PM, and that is once again in UK time. Don't forget the race on Saturday. I think I've made that clear. It's not just F1 that gets going this weekend at Sakir, though, with F2 and F3.
Oh yeah, F2, F3. Hype. Dino Beganovic, can you win? How will the Mercedes person succeed in Formula 2?
Both getting their seasons underway, and both sprint races take place on Friday and both feature races on Saturday. So lots of action to look forward to over the next few days. Now, before I kick this...
Actually, no. There will not be a lot of action. This will be Monaco times how many races there are now in Formula 2 and Formula 3. And if you watch IndyCar, it's almost that also.
Season off with some absolutely horrendous predictions. Let's have a look at some of the headlines.
Yeah, prediction time.
I've been doing the rounds since testing. The first talking point is the same as it is every year at the opening race, and that is which team is where, what is the pecking order. The truth is, although there will be plenty of articles and videos out there claiming they've cracked the code, we won't know for sure until qualifying at the earliest, and it could be several races before that true, genuine order becomes apparent. Based on what we saw in testing, though, it does appear that Red Bull come into the season as the favourites. No great surprise there. But Ferrari in particular also looked strong during their race run, so it could well be much closer this year than it was 12 months ago. Now, Lawrence Barretto has said over at F1.com that the data suggests the world champions have a one-lap pace advantage of just over 0.2 of a second, and it's...
I mean, this doesn't look like... There's just some foxes here, but for before this, it was just 4 or 3 foxes. They almost went instinct in this... for some reason. In this place. Yeah, no need to worry about them.
It's a similar story with their race pace as well. That obviously has to come with all the usual caveats, you know, things like Red Bull probably weren't flat out and we don't know the fuel loads and all of those kinds of things. But one thing many people do seem to agree on is that the battle between Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren and perhaps Aston Martin looks to be...
Mercedes, that's copium.
Be very close, and RB, that's the former AlphaTauri team, have also taken a big step forward and look like they may well start the season as top of the other 5 teams, the other 5 teams being RB themselves, Alpine, Williams, Sauber and Haas, of course. Look, I can't wait to see how it all shakes out across these first few races, and I'll be very surprised if Red Bull don't have more in their locker. Then again, you could easily argue that there will be other teams, perhaps all of them, with pace still to show. Away from the racetrack and at time of recording, there has still been no decision or conclusion officially communicated regarding the...
It must be released some days ago. It looked like Red Bull has had nothing. We didn't find anything.
Christian Horner investigation. However, it has been reported by Sky Sports F1, among others, that the final report is currently in the hands of Red Bull Racing's parent company, that's Red Bull GmbH, with the board ultimately responsible for whether Horner will remain in his role as team principal and chief executive. Sky F1 does go on to say, though, that a decision is expected to be made and communicated before this weekend's Bahrain Grand Prix gets underway. Again, though, as I sit here and record this on Tuesday afternoon, there has been no such announcement, but if there is any news between me saying this and the video going out, I'll pop a link to an article explaining everything down in the description. I just thought it was important to mention ahead of the new season, just in case the reports of an imminent decision are correct. Moving on, and new Haas team principal Ao Komatsu says he believes the team has managed to solve some of the, what he called, nasty characteristics that plagued the team throughout the 2023 season. Cast your minds back to last season. It was clear the VF23 had some good pace, especially over one lap, but issues with tyre degradation meant the drivers would often fall back through the field on a Sunday. However, after pumping in a lot of laps during pre-season testing, the most of any team actually, Komatsu says that although the car is still lacking downforce, especially in high-speed corners, it is behaving in a more consistent and predictable manner. Concerns around overall performance are absolutely still there, but the team boss believes the car is a good baseline, and this year, the focus will be on race performance rather than headline-grabbing qualifying results, saying, quote, "There is no point qualifying in P7 and going backwards on Sunday. I'd rather qualify P14 but have a car we can race and get up to the top 10. That is our objective." And finally, for this part, during last week's testing streams, we discussed the rumour that had started flying around that there was a risk Audi could pull the plug on its plan to enter F1 in 2026. Yes, another Audi pulling the plug rumour. It was reported that following the exit from the company of CEO Marcus Duesman, a key advocate of the project, his successor was believed to be lukewarm about joining F1, with reports coming from Germany suggesting Audi could be willing to sell the team and walk away from the plan to join the sport. Sauber team boss Alessandro Aluni-Bravi, though, has since told Autosport the commitment to F1 from the Audi group is strong and insisted that everything is still proceeding according to the timeline and the agreed governance between shareholders. Aluni-Bravi added that there is, quote, "no change, and as we are approaching more and more the target of 2026, we need to work even harder." Right then, time for me to make my first load of predictions in 2024. But before I do that, and for anybody who might be new to the channel, these really are just for fun, and there is zero reason to take them too seriously. Something for you all to give me grief about at the end of the year. After all, last season, out of a possible 155 points, I scored just 58.5 points. So yeah, I'm not very good at this. It's all good fun though. What I will say, though, is that these are my favourite predictions to make of the year. It's the first race of the season, and although we all probably have a rough idea who is going to be quick and who isn't, we don't 100% know for sure what the pecking order is. So I'm not going in blind as such, but we only have testing to go off. With all of that said, and as I went over earlier, I do think this season will be closer than last season. Yes, call it naive optimism if you want. But even though Red Bull still look good and will be the hot favourites, Ferrari certainly appear to have some very competitive pace on those long runs. So it looks as though it will be between Red Bull and Ferrari this weekend, and perhaps much of the first chunk of the season. I'm going to try and get some points on the board early on this year, and so I will pick up where I left off in 2023. Brace yourself and go with a Max Verstappen pole position and a win in Bahrain. Max Verstappen winning a race? Never. But I'm actually going to put Charles Leclerc in P2, and it is a bit of a toss-up for me between Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz for that final podium spot, but I'll go with Sainz to complete a double Ferrari podium.
No, boarding. Lando Norris,
could just as easily be a Red Bull 1-2 or Sainz second with Perez third. Any combination, really. Behind the top two, or my top two for this weekend, I really don't know. It could be anybody's game. I'm not convinced Mercedes are as far away as some are predicting. I've seen some articles claiming they are around 5th fastest, but I do believe it is seriously tight, especially with McLaren. So, for third best team, I'm going with the Silver Arrows, but again, McLaren will be right in the mix. And by the way, I've kind of touched on it.
Oh, he's talking about machines now. Wait.
I really don't know. It could be anybody's game. I'm not convinced Mercedes are as far away as some are predicting. I've seen some articles claiming they are around 5th fastest, but I do believe it is seriously tight, especially with McLaren. So, for third best team, I'm going with the Silver Arrows, but again, McLaren will be right in the mix. And by the way, I've kind of...
this looks so like Aston Martin.
Touched on it, but don't ignore Aston Martin. I think they're looking fairly good as well and might spring a surprise in that battle during the race. My team to watch in Bahrain is Alpine. Yes, Alpine. Stick with me on this. They were the team I probably struggled to read the most during testing, and there are so many different guesses around where they could be in terms of pace. I've even seen some very reputable sites putting them P10, so I'm honestly really intrigued to see where they end up. And on that note...
Wait, P10? Who?
And so I'm honestly really intrigued to see where they end up. And on that note, an honourable mention to RB, because they could also be a bit of a surprise package this weekend. Look, I know this won't come as a massive surprise, but I am so excited for this season. Even if it does end up being another hugely dominant season, as some are predicting.
Obviously, the most exciting is to see Mercedes being bad again.
Red Bull cruise to another title double. The rest of the field looks pretty tight. But long story short, I just cannot wait for the talking to stop and the racing to finally start. that is it then for the Bahrain Grand Prix preview, but you can let me know your thoughts and your predictions ahead of the weekend in the comments section down below. We're going racing this weekend. I mean, I won't be racing, I'll be watching it like most other people, but anyway, I will be back soon with some more content, but just a reminder that we won't be doing a race reaction stream after every race this year. This has been coming for a while. Instead, I will be live with Stuart at 7 PM GMT on Monday to debrief the weekend. Yes, I know the race is on Saturday, but I want to start the season as a mean to go on, maybe even get into a routine this year. Crazy thought, I know. So it will still be on Monday. In the meantime, though, if you did enjoy this one, then please do leave a like, as it really does help the channel out. And also, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any future videos or streams. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.
Well, that's done. And it's... oh shit. And then I play. No, shouldn't be anything more interesting, maybe. No. Well, that's it then. All Formula 1 stuff that could be interesting to watch have been watched. God damn it, one more place. No interesting fishes. Okay, let's go back. The fun. Yeah, super fun. I mean, this thing I will mine out equally much at this place than this place, than is 3 places. Yeah, 3 places at that corner left to mine out. So for now, 5 corners left to mine out. Oh, 5 areas in 2 corners. Let's get the last food in and then we can end this. And tomorrow there will be the first practice. The first qualifying for Formula 3 and Formula 2, and then the second practice for Formula 1. And hopefully Mercedes will be still bad, so